coming to your mat, placing your blocks if you have your blocks handy. We'll come to sit with the legs crossed in front of your support. And then slowly as you recline down, the blocks are going to support your rib cage and run between your shoulder blades. And then your head, make sure that it's not dropping back behind you. That might feel uncomfortable. You can have your top block even a little bit higher if you want. And then it's nice and supportive for the back of your head. Wherever you are and whatever support you're using, make sure there's no strain in your neck and no discomfort in your lower back. By shuffling a bit away from the blocks, help to give the lower back a little bit more space if you need to. So spend a little time making sure that's comfortable. At any point, if you need to just come and lie flat on your back, please listen to your body and don't take any kind of strain. Legs come into an easy cross-legged position. And when you feel settled, you can bring your arms into cactus position. And just gently start to feel an opening across the chest as we stretch into the pecs. Lovely. And like that, you can slowly start to glide your arms up and down, drawing elbows towards your head and then gliding your elbows down towards your waist. So they're moving up and down along the sides just to feel that stretch running across the chest and into the arms. And coordinate your breath with this movement as you inhale, glide the elbows up. And exhale, glide the elbows down towards the hips. And just do this at your own rhythm, at your own pace. Just very gently easing into your body this morning. And then from here, we take the arms overhead and hold on to the elbows. So holding palm to elbow grip, and then just allowing your forearms to drop back so you can feel a nice stretch into the shoulders. Now bringing the arms into shoulder flexion, stretching into triceps, and just reaching up through those elbows, and then just relaxing the arms back. So we're working into that stretch. Take a few deep breaths here. Working these shapes for our top arm in mermaid pose later on as we move to our peak pose. This will be for your top arm to reach back and bind your backhand. So change the grip of your arm so that your other forearm is on top. And then relax the arms back down and take a few deep breaths here. Stretching through the sides of the body as you reach up through the elbows. Lovely. And when you're ready, you can softly release your arms back down to your sides, placing your hands flat on the ground. Just taking one more breath in this lovely supported back bend. Nice deep inhale, feeling that lovely lift of your chest. And when you're ready, you can prop yourself up, either up onto your elbows or push into your hands to slowly come up to seated. Moving your blocks off to the side or any support you made use of. And then gently uncross your legs and come to lying down on your back, just in a neutral spine position, and allow your back to just take a moment to relax onto the ground. we're coming into a figure 4 stretch to start to work into the hips. So cross your right ankle over your left thigh and press the right thigh out so we're externally rotating in the hip. Floating your left leg up, take hold of the back of your left thigh or left shin, wherever feels comfortable for you this morning, and start to feel that opening into the right hip for our pigeon leg later on in mermaid. And take a few deep breaths here, relaxing your shoulders back onto the mat, no tension in your neck. Breathing into that stretch. Good. From here, we'll take a twisted figure 4 with the quad stretch. So bring your left toes towards the center of the mat, so they're handy to grab hold of just now. And then twist your knees and feet towards the left, grounding the right sole of your foot off to the outside of your mat. And then if you like, you can reach your right hand back for your left foot and draw the thigh back a little bit for a little quad stretch. Good. And then if you wish, you can turn your gaze to the right to relax into that twist and drop both shoulders back to the ground. Option to press the right knee up towards the ceiling to keep that opening in the hip if it feels comfortable. Or wherever this stretch feels good for you this morning. Gently we release, draw the legs back through center. You can straighten the legs up towards the ceiling and then change the cross of the legs, bringing left ankle to cross over the right thigh, pressing that left thigh out to externally rotate the hip. Taking hold of the back of the right thigh or shin, coming into your figure 4 pose. Resting the shoulders back on the ground. Gently start to feel that opening into the left hip. Moving into our figure 4 with a twist and quad stretch. Right toes come towards the center of the mat as you twist the legs over towards the right side. Maybe you want to reach back and take hold of your right foot with your left hand, drawing the knee and thigh back for a little quad stretch. Maybe lightly pressing the left thigh open, maybe turning your gaze towards the left, just finding where that stretch is working for you this morning. A nice deep breath to soften into the twist. And when you're ready, we gently release the legs, straighten legs to the ceiling, and just hug your knees to your chest softly, just releasing the back into the ground, maybe with a little rock from side to side, massaging out those back muscles before we slowly move into back bends. When you're ready, roll yourself all the way up to kneeling position, so coming to seated, popping feet to the sides or rolling over ankles and feet. Sit back into child's pose with big toes together, knees apart, and then walking the arms forward. So you're really reaching through your arms. See how much you can reach forwards and feel the length in the spine and through the sides of your body. Allow your chest to drop through your thighs towards the ground. Resting your forehead to the mat and taking a few breaths here to soften into your child's pose. From here, gently walk your hands over to the right side until you find a nice stretch running down the left side of your body. Maybe you're bringing your chest to lie over your right thigh. And then reach through the arms. As you take a few deep breaths, think of breathing into the left side of the body, into that stretch. Slowly moving back through center and onto the left side. So taking some lateral stretches to help warm up the spine and the muscles in the sides of the body and sides of the back. Nice deep breaths here on the left side. Beautiful. Bringing it back to center, this time placing your elbows on the floor and moving into our child's pose with our palms pressed together, elbows on the mat, and then drawing the hands to the back of your head. And in that position, wiggle your elbows forward so you're feeling a little bit more stretch into your triceps, as well as working our shoulders and shoulder flexion to work the shapes for mermaid later on. If this is enough this morning, stay here. Option to take Gomukhasana, cow face arms. So leaving the right elbow where it is, you take your left arm out to the side, turn the thumb down towards the floor, and then you bend your left elbow, wiggling your left palm between your shoulder blades, and option to bind your fingers behind your back. This can be quite strong, so take it gently. Then rolling the left shoulder away from the ground. Gently release, do that on the other side, or stay with your hands in your prayer position. Maybe you're taking the right hand back for Gomukhasana arms, cow face arms. And rolling the right shoulder away from the ground. Wherever you are, gently releasing the arms, pressing your palms forwards and coming up onto all fours. Walk yourself in so that your hands are placed underneath the shoulders, knees placed underneath your hips, and moving through a few rounds of cat-cow as we inhale, gently arch the spine and lift your chest. Really feel your shoulder blades gliding down your back. And on your exhale, round through the spine, press into your hands and feel a nice stretch running through the back. Move with your breath as you inhale, lengthen forwards, lift the chest and draw the shoulder blades down. And exhale to round. 2 more times, flowing with your own breath at your own rhythm, just feeling into your back. Checking into your body, moving in a way that feels good for you this morning. Lovely. When you're ready, returning back into a neutral spine position, and then checking in with your hands that your fingers are still spreading nice and wide. We take the right leg straight back behind you and then lift the right leg up nice and high at the back. So we're allowing that hip to open a little bit and taking the right leg back into hip extension. Good. From here, gently bend the right knee and draw that right leg into like a little scorpion position. Good. Lift that thigh up nice and high so you can feel glutes and hamstrings are squeezing and working. Look forwards for a baby chaturanga. Lean forwards over your wrists. Bend your elbows and go and squeezing that right leg up nice and high at the back, opening the chest, lowering through baby chaturanga. Pushing back up to hands and knees, round knee to nose, and take a big step forwards with your right foot into a lunge. Low lunge, come onto your fingertips. Lift your chest. Broaden across your collarbones. As we come into a gentle hip flexor and quad stretch here in our low lunge because our leg is back in hip extension. Normally I wouldn't talk like this in a yoga class, but I'm just bringing in those terms for you guys so we can place it in movement. Ground your left hand securely on the mat and twist your right arm up towards the ceiling. Reach back for your back foot and come into a nice, strong quad stretch. So we stretch quads when the back knee is bent and the leg is back in hip extension. Makes sense? You can really feel now your quads, your thigh muscles are stretching. Roll the shoulders back and lift your chest. Take one more deep breath here in this quad stretch. Good. Slowly we release to ground the hands. Bring your hands back a little bit closer towards you and kick the right leg back behind you. Bend the right knee back into scorpion tail. This time shift your weight into your right hand and your left hand reaches back for your right foot. Good. Gently kick your right foot into your hand. Rotate the chest and kick those toes up nice and high at the back. Take one more breath in. And exhale, release back to hands and knees, grounding on all fours. Lovely. Let's feel it on the other side. Left leg reaches back. Take the leg high up at the back into hip extension. We use that a lot when it comes to back bends. Bend your back knee, scorpion tail. Look forwards, lean forwards, baby chaturanga. Keep your collarbones open, elbows squeezing towards the sides. Take a breath here, and then press back up. Beautiful. Knee to nose step forwards, low lunge. And in your lunge, be on your fingertips to keep your chest lifted. Allow the hips to come down. Can you feel that stretch into your hip flexors and quads starting? Take a breath here. And then ground your right hand firmly on the mat. Twist your left arm up to the ceiling and then reach your left hand back for your right foot as you bend your back knee. The back leg is stretching into quads because our leg is back in hip extension and we're bending that knee. You can feel it now. Draw your heel to your bum to deepen that stretch into the quads. And breathe here. Beautiful. Gently we release, grounding the hands a little bit closer, sweeping the left leg back behind you, up nice and high. Bend your left knee to scorpion tail, this time shifting weight to the left hand. Reach right hand back to hold the foot, and then gently kick your foot into your hand to open the chest and lift toes high up at the back. Taking one more breath and releasing back on to all fours to ground. Lovely. Let's step the right foot back, tuck the toe, followed by your left foot and come to plank. Strong arms in plank, stacking shoulders over wrists. And then with a slow, strong push, taking the hips up and back into downward facing dog. Beautiful. And like we spoke about last night, lift your hips up towards the ceiling, stick your bum up into the air, sit bones up in your downward dog. If you like, you can pedal out your feet or bend and stretch your knees, whatever feels good in your first downward dog of the morning. And then gently start to walk your feet forwards to the top of the mat, easing up to standing. Inhale, press hands to shins, lift your chest and broaden across your collarbones without scrunching your neck. Keep the back of your neck lengthened. And exhale to forward fold, head down and soften your neck. Rise on up to standing as we inhale, reach up through the arms, really reach. So we feel the sides of the body lengthening up and lift your chest just a little bit for a gentle back bend in high mountain. And then relax your arms down to your sides And ground here in Tadasana, mountain pose. Coming back to your breath. Back to center. Beautiful. Ready to flow? Let's inhale both arms up, Hastasana, high mountain. This time drop your right arm down to your side and take a lateral stretch to the right. Good, lateral stretches to help warm the spine for back bends. Inhale, rise both arms up. Exhale, drop the left arm down to the side and nice lateral stretch over to the left, keeping hips and shoulders pointing to the front. Inhale, arms up. Reach up through your arms, lift your chest, teeny little back bend by more just lifting in the chest without dumping in the lower back. And forward fold coming all the way down. Relax the back of the neck. Inhale, hands to shins, press chest forwards. Exhale, stepping back into plank. Nice and strong in your plank position. Taking a breath here. And really working the arms as you push through the hands, pushing the hips up and back into downward facing dog. Sweeping the right leg up for three-legged dog. Allow the hips to open to take the right leg higher up at the back in hip extension. Bend the right knee to draw your heel towards your left bum cheek. So because we've bent the knee in hip extension, feel a little stretch into quads and hip flexors here. Can you feel that? Good. Square off your hips back to three-legged dog and take a big step forwards between your hands. Anjaneyasana, low lunge with the back bend. Ground your back knee and inhale, reach both arms up. Here, feel that reaching through the sides of the body and lengthening through the spine. Drop your right arm to the side and take a nice side stretch over to the right. Inhale, reach both arms up and really reach up. Exhale to cactus your arms, lift your chest, little back bend. And inhale, reach arms up. Circle your arms behind you to interlace your fingers. Straighten the arms and inhale, lift your chest, drawing your wrists away from your hips to deepen that stretch. Beautiful. Slowly release, hands back to the mat. Sweep right leg up, three-legged dog. Allow the hips to open to take the leg higher and back to downward facing dog. Let's feel it on the other side. Left leg rises up, three-legged dog. Allow the hips to open up. Bending the left knee, take your heel off to the right sit bone and gently open up through the hips. Good. Feel a little quad stretch and a hip opener there because the leg is back in hip extension and the knee is bent. Good. Square back into three-legged dog and big step forwards between your hands. Grounding your right knee down, inhale, arms up, Anjaneyasana. Low lunge with a back bend. And feel that reaching up through the sides of the body. Good. Dropping the right arm down to the side, take a nice side stretch over to the left. Inhale, reach arms up. Exhale, cactus arms with a little back bend. Inhale, arms up, circling your arms behind you to interlace your fingers. Inhale, lift your chest, little back bend. Beautiful. Ground through your hands, sweep left leg back into three-legged dog, and ground back to your downward facing dog. Take a moment just to breathe here in your down dog. Go on, lifting the tailbone up to the sky. Gazing to the top of the mat, option to walk, step, or jump to your hands. Inhale, halfway lift, press chest forwards. And exhale to forward fold and relax the back of your neck fully. Rise on up to standing. Inhale, reach both arms up. Reach, reach, reach. Little back bend, tiny lift in the chest. And then relax arms to your sides. Take a moment to ground and connect back with your breath. Next, we'll flow from Utkatasana, chair pose. So bending your knees, brush your fingertips across the mat. Sit your way back into your heels, bum back. Good, and then take your arms up for chair pose. Circle your arms behind you to interlace your fingers. And inhale, lift your chest, little back bend in your chair. Keeping fingers interlaced, straighten your legs and forward fold, allowing the arms to tip overhead and relax through the back of your neck. Release arms to the ground. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Taking a step back into your plank, nice and strong, holding in plank. Good, breathing in. And pressing back into downward facing dog, lifting the hips high up towards the ceiling. All right, right leg rises up with three-legged dog. Allow the hips to open. Bend the right knee, taking heel off to the left sit bone. And you can stay here, especially if you're working with any shoulder niggles. Or option to step that right foot off your mat and flip your dog into wild thing, pressing hips and shoulders up and sweeping the top arm overhead. Take one more breath here. And then turning yourself back into three-legged dog, right leg rising up. Big step forwards between your hands for high lunge. Check knees stacking over ankle and inhale to rise up for high lunge. Again in high lunge, feel that lifting up through the sides of the body, reaching through your arms, little lift in the chest. Good. Drop your right arm to the side. Take a side stretch over to the right. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, cactus arms with a little back bend, lifting your chest. Inhale, arms up. And then circling your hands behind you to interlace your fingers. Inhale, straighten the arms, lift your chest. Ground your back heel, left heel to the mat. And then forward fold for humble warrior, bringing your chest to the inside of your right thigh. And taking the arms up higher at the back. And then soften your neck in humble warrior. Breathing here. Release your hands to the ground and turn back into the ball of your back foot. Sweep right leg back, three-legged dog. And back into downward facing dog. Good. Breathe here in your down dog. On the other side, we take the left leg up, three-legged dog. Bend the left knee and tip your heel over to the right sit bone. Stay here, or option to flip your dog. And press the hips up into wild thing, reaching the top arm overhead. Take an inhale. And exhale, turn back into three-legged dog. Left leg rising up. Beautiful. Big step forwards between the hands. Knee stacks over ankle. Inhale, rise it up for high lunge. And reach up through the sides of your body. Beautiful. Feel that length in the spine. Dropping left arm to the side, take a side stretch to the left. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, cactus arms with a little back bend. Beautiful. Inhale, reach arms up. Circling hands behind you, interlace your fingers. Inhale, lift your chest. Exhale, we ground the back heel and forward fold for humble warrior pose. Softening the back of the neck and reaching the arms overhead. Gently release the arms back to the mat. Turn back into the ball of your back foot. Sweep left leg up, three-legged dog. And ground back into downward facing dog. Breathing here in your down dog. We're gazing forwards to the top of the mat. Option to walk, step, or jump to hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Good. Press the chest forwards and lengthen the back of the neck. Exhale, forward fold, softening the head fully. Rising on up to standing. Inhale, reach up. And exhale, relax your arms down to your sides. And take a moment to come back to your breath. And ground here into Tadasana. Beautiful. Starting in chair pose again, we bend the knees and brush fingertips across the mat, sitting the weight back into the heels, deep squat down into chair pose. For twisted chair, we bring hands to heart center. Take a twist to the right, hooking your left elbow to your right outer thigh. Then lean the shoulders back and twist your chest open. Shift your weight onto your right foot. Allow your left foot to feel lighter and step your left foot back into a lunge. Good. Inhale, both arms up. High lunge. Well done. From here, open out into warrior two. So ground the left back heel. Press your right thigh out. Feel that external rotation in the hip. And then gaze down to make sure that you lean back slightly to stack your shoulders over your hips. Look to your back arm. Make sure it's in line with the shoulder. And then focus your final drishti over your right hand. Beautiful. Inhale, straighten arms and legs. Turn your toes to face the front. To change direction, left toes turn out. Right toes turn in. Take warrior two to the left side. Good. Moving to your side angle pose, either elbow onto the thigh, or if you liked, full version, fingertips to the ground. Sweep your right hand down to the floor, and then over in line with your right ear. Twist your chest open and feel the thigh pressing out on the left. Feel that external rotation in the hips. Beautiful. Keep your deep bend in your left knee and come up to reverse your warrior. Sweeping the left arm up, right hand back. An option here, again, to bind your hands behind your back in Gomukhasana and reach that top elbow up to the ceiling. Beautiful. Release the arms and wiggle your arms to the back of the mat. Step back into downward dog facing the back of your mat and breathe here in your down dog. Right leg rises up, three-legged dog. Big step forwards between your hands. Open up to goddess pose, facing the side of your mat, and press your thighs out to the sides. Arms into cactus, and lift your chest into a little back bend here in goddess. Inhale, straighten arms and legs like a star. And exhale, bend the knees, press the thighs out, goddess squat, little back bend. Inhale to straighten star. Exhale, goddess with a little back bend. One last time. Inhale to straighten. Exhale, goddess squat. Inhale to straighten. Swivel on your feet back to face the front of the mat into a lunge facing forwards. Good. Figure four standing. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh. And then squat down through your hips. Leaning the chest slightly forwards, feeling that stretch into the right hip. And you can stay here, or option to move into dancer's pose, Right hand turns out, thumb up to the ceiling. Hold the inside arch of your right foot. Left arm extends overhead as you kick your right foot into your hand, keeping the chest first upright. And then option to lean it forwards and kick the right toes higher up at the back. Take one more breath in your dancer's pose. And then squeeze thighs together to come upright. And release and ground into Tadasana. Well done. Long deep breaths in. Long deep breaths out to ground. Beautiful. We'll take that on the left side. So when you're ready, bending the knees, sweeping from the ground, Utkatasana chair. Bring hands to the center of your chest. Take a twist to the left side this time, hooking right elbow to left thigh, and then lean the head back to twist chest open. And notice one knee will slide forwards of the other. Allow for that, we'll chat about that later. Weight on your left foot, right foot becomes lighter. Big step back with the right foot to lunge. Good, arms up, high lunge. Inhale, reach arms up. Well done, that's not an easy transition. Turn into warrior two, grounding the back foot. Pressing that left thigh out. Leaning shoulders to stack over hips. Check in with the back arm. Check in with your front arm. Holding strong in warrior two. Good. Inhale, straighten arms and legs. Swivel on the feet to take warrior two on the other side. Right knee bends. Beautiful. And then moving into side angle, either elbow to the thigh or hand to the floor. Sweeping your left hand down and then over in line with your ear. Twisting the chest open and pressing that left thigh out to the side. Inhale, we come up to reverse the warrior. And option to take Gomukhasana arms, binding the fingers behind your back and reaching up through that top arm. Breathing in. Windmill the arms to the back of the mat to ground. And step back, downward dog, facing the back of your mat. And breathe here in your down dog. Left leg rises up, three-legged dog, inhale. Big step forwards between your hands. Open up into goddess pose, pressing the thighs out to the sides. Little back bend, lifting your chest in goddess. Inhale to straighten arms and legs like a star, and exhale, goddess squat with back bend. Inhale to straighten. Exhale, goddess squat. Lift the chest in cactus. One last time. Inhale to straighten. Exhale, goddess pose. Inhale to straighten and swivel on the feet to face back to the front of your mat in a high lunge. Moving into standing figure four, cross left ankle over right thigh. Bring hands to heart center and squat down through the legs. Option to stay here or move into your dancer's pose. Sending the left leg back, thumb up to the ceiling with that left hand. Hold the inside arch of the foot. Inhale, right arm lifts. Moving into dancers first by just kicking the back foot up. Option to stay upright or lean forwards in your dancer's pose and kick the back toes up higher. One more breath. And then squeezing thighs together to come upright. And grounding into Tadasana. Come back to your breath. Well done. Just take a moment to ground here. When you're ready to flow, let's inhale, arms up. Hastasana, high mountain, lift your chest, little back bend, but go on reaching up. Slow forward fold, coming all the way down. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, ground through the hands, stepping back into plank. And slow, strong push to move back into downward facing dog. Right leg rises up, three-legged dog. And bring the right leg into pigeon, bringing the knee to the outside of your right wrist. Remember, the wider you take that knee, the more surface area you have on the mat to ground you. Now, with your left leg, straighten your back leg and slide your left leg back as much as possible. And then settle down into the hips, okay? Even weight through both sides of the pelvis. And then exhale, forward folding pigeon with either bent arms or straight arms. And breathing here in your pigeon pose. Feeling balance through right and left sides of the pelvis. Walk your hands over to the right side and get a nice lateral stretch in your pigeon pose and breathe. Walk hands through center and over to the left side. And breathe in your pigeon with a lateral stretch. Come back to center. Bring your left forearm parallel to the front of the mat, right? And twist right arm up towards the ceiling, reaching up through your top hand and pressing down through the bottom arm so you're not sinking into that shoulder. Change arms, right elbow comes down and twisting left arm up towards the ceiling. Beautiful. Gently ground through your hands and come to sitting upright in your pigeon pose. Quad stretch, bend the back knee. Okay, for me here again, I shuffle my leg back even more. So when I bend my back leg, I'm not on my kneecap at all. All the weight is resting on the thigh. So see how far you can shuffle your back leg away from you. It helps a lot as well for the balance. Bring your right hand to the middle of the mat and reach your left hand back for your left foot. Draw your left heel towards your bum. Can you feel the stretch in the quads? Because your leg is back in hip extension. We bend the knee to stretch quads. Good. Now, see if you feel that your right hand feels lighter here. See if you can almost find a stable base that you can push lightly down through your right shin, but you're relying less on your hands. That's the challenge for our mermaid pose. Good. Slowly release. Tuck your back toes and step back into plank, holding your plank position. Good. Kneeling chaturanga. Bring your knees to the ground. Look forwards, lean forwards. And slowly start to bend your elbows. Lean forwards, look forwards into a mantra. And lower down onto your belly as one. Good, nice control. Point your toes and curl your chest up for cobra. Pulling the shoulder blades down and together. Lengthen the back of your neck, don't scrunch it. Exhale, slowly lower. Push strongly back up onto hands and knees, like a reverse chaturanga. Remember, this is the concentric way to push in chaturanga. When we lower, it's eccentric. When we push up, it's concentric, talking about the tricep muscles. Okay, back into down dog. We'll feel that again in a second. I know it's confusing. And breathe. On the left leg rises, three-legged dog. Bring it forwards into your pigeon pose. Taking that knee wide. My knee's almost off my mat. Good, then shuffle your right leg back as much as you can. Slide it back. And forward fold into pigeon. Either onto your elbows or with arms straight. And breathing in your pigeon pose. Walking hands over to the left side, lateral stretch in your pigeon. And breathing here. And then gently walking hands over to the right side and lateral stretch in your pigeon. Walking back to center, bringing the right forearm parallel to the front of the mat. We twist the left arm up towards the ceiling. Twisting in your pigeon, right arm, yes, is down, left arm is up. There we are, there's a little bit of lag. And then changing sides. Twisting in your pigeon, the left elbow is down, the right arm is up to the ceiling. Reaching through the top arm and twisting, making sure you're not sinking in the bottom arm. Good. And then coming back to your hands, walk yourself upright in your pigeon. And for your quad stretch, left hand comes to the middle of the mat, right knee bends. If you need to, shuffle back more with that back leg. I promise it really helps. Reaching your right hand back for your right foot and drawing that heel to your bum for a quad stretch. Good. And then see if you become less reliant on your left hand, so the left hand becomes lighter, so that we're working the stable base for our mermaid pose. One more breath here. Go on drawing that back heel in for a good quad stretch at the back, heel to bum. Good. Ground through the hands. Tuck back toes. Back into plank. Holding strong in your plank pose. Good. Full chaturanga if you wish, or continue with kneeling. Look forwards, lean forwards. Now triceps are lengthening and contracting as we lower. So they're eccentrically working as we lower in chaturanga, our arms. Yes, inhale to cobra. Or if you're feeling up for it, maybe an upward facing dog. Good. And then lower your chest to the ground just so we can feel our chaturangas. Now when we push back, see if you can push back into plank. Your triceps are contracting concentrically. They're shortening to straighten your arms and push you back into plank. Yes, downward facing dog. Breathe here in your downward dog before we take our final pose in mermaid. Remember, block is really handy to sit on to feel balance in your hips. So if you want to grab the block at this point, remember that's very handy. Right leg up, three-legged dog. Bring it forwards into pigeon pose. Take that knee wide out to the side. Okay. Now here, just check. Here in pigeon, can you lift your hands off the floor? Have you shuffled your back leg away enough? And is your right knee wide out to the side so that you can sit in pigeon without hands? Yeah? If not, you may have to shuffle and get yourself feeling a bit wider. Even if your left foot is going towards the corner of the mat, that's also okay. Okay. Then we bend the left back knee. Reach left hand for foot. Again, check, can your right hand lift? Have you found a stable base? And that is also huge. You can just be here in your mermaid, and that's a massive achievement just to feel stable. If you're really struggling, take a block and sit on it underneath your right bum cheek or right thigh. And then you'll feel that block helps you to find that stable base. So you have that option. Okay. If you're moving into a deeper version of the pose, bend your left elbow and allow your foot to slide into your inner left elbow. Right arm reaches up to the ceiling. And if you want from here, maybe you're binding the hands like we felt through the class into your mermaid pose. And then you slightly square your shoulders towards the front of the mat, even though the hips are going to be open. So wherever you are, find your mermaid, your expression of mermaid. One more breath. Good. And when you're ready, gently release and push it back into downward facing dog. Let's feel it on the other side. Left leg rises up, three-legged dog, and bring that knee to the outside of your left wrist. Okay? Slide your right leg back, and before you go anywhere, can you be here without hands, just in pigeon? Good. That's the test. If you need to, shuffle, adjust, use a block. It's very helpful. Okay? Going a little further, bend your back knee, reach your right hand back for your foot, And then again, just check your stable base. Good, I'm gonna have a look. All right, try and keep your weight fairly even on right and left sides. Nice base there, Carmel, that looks fantastic. So I'm gonna take your left knee wider out to the side if you can, because it's pointing to the front. But you found a base there, good. And then maybe you're drawing your foot into the crook of your elbow. Maybe you're just finding a stable base, which is huge. Maybe you're reaching fingertips to touch. Wherever you are, just feel stable is the hardest part. And then Renelle, look forwards and lift your chest, little back bend, reach your top elbow up to the ceiling so you're more upright. Yes. Renelle, take that elbow out to the side a bit. So your top elbow, take it out towards the windows and that'll give you more space. Yes. Can you see how that's brought you upright? Beautiful. One more breath wherever you are. And when you're ready, releasing back into downward facing dog. Well done, everyone. Oh, stretch out in your downward dog. Breathe there. Slowly walk your feet forwards to the top of the mat so you're standing between your hands. Inhale to halfway lift. And exhale, forward fold. Relax the back of your neck. Bend your knees into Utkatasana chair pose. And then come down all the way to squat down into Malasana. Heels lift, knees out to the side, shoulders between the knees. And just allow your back to soften and gently round in your Malasana. Releasing out all that tension in your back bends. When you're ready, sit your bum onto the floor and gently lower down to lie on your back. And lying on your back, just allow the spine to settle back into its natural curves. Soften the back, relax the shoulders, and breathe here. And then hug gently your knees to your chest. One at a time, and move into happy baby pose, taking hold of the outer edges of your feet, bringing your knees to the outside of your ribs, and then allowing your lower back to really push down and relax onto the floor. If you want to rock a little from side to massage it out, feel free to, or maybe you just want to be centered and just feel that release in your back in happy baby. Then from here, join the knees together and curl your head up to bring your nose between your knees in a tight little ball. Keep holding your right knee and send your left leg straight away from you. And really feel your back pushing into the floor, abdominal muscles switching on. Bring your left knee back and then change legs. Right leg reaches away, curl up nice and high, push your back into the floor. Bring it back to center, curl up nice and tight one more time. And then just relax your head back onto the mat. Hugging knees to chest. Allow your tailbone to almost lift off the floor. Tight little stretch. Feeling the back completely round and soften. Ground your feet one at a time back onto the floor. And I always like to do a few windscreen wipers just to kind of release and unwind. Arms wherever they feel comfortable or in cactus. And just gently roll your knees from side to side in your own time. Just really feeling those back muscles relaxing now. And then when you're ready, move to your final relaxation. Remember, a cushion or a pillow underneath your thighs feels really nice to keep your back relaxed. So if you have one, you can pop a little support underneath your thighs and then just let your feet flop out to the sides. Palms turn up to face the ceiling and settle in for Shavasana. Make any finer adjustments so that you're completely comfortable. Then become still and relax. To find your stable base in that pigeon, it's tricky.
I have a question about.
Yes, Karen, and then we'll come to you, Zama.
I find that there are two possibilities. I can either rock my body forward and be sitting up, or I can sort of sink into my butt. Which is the correct?
So I think I'd have to see, Karen, to actually be able to tell you exactly. But you want to be fairly upright. So we don't want to be tilting and leaning too far forwards into the front leg. Most likely you'll actually be more towards your back leg side so that you're sitting upright, because you are then leaning back into that back bend. Where if you're very far forwards like this, then you're not able to get your chest more upright.
Right, so the back would.
I would have to see to be completely sure, but yes, just by for the sounds of things, because mermaid is just an introduction, really. I mean, it's quite a big pose already, but it's an introduction pose to your full king pigeon pose, where you have both arms overhead like this and you're reaching back to hold your back foot with both hands, and then you're really leaning back onto your back leg. So I would say moving back is the better one to be encouraging for where that pose is heading later on. Okay. Zama?
Oh no, I was just going to say that today it was easier because you gave me the instruction to kind of open my leg a little bit more, so I was able to be a bit more stable, because I always thought you kind of had to almost sit on, almost like you're sitting on it.
Yeah.
And I could never be stable. I'd be like, oh my gosh.
I'm so glad that worked for you, Zama, because I wasn't quite sure, because I could only see you from the side and it looked like your knee was right in the middle of your mat.
Right.
Taking it out to the side a little bit makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Nice. Well done, everyone. And we'll also be covering mermaid in more detail, and moving into king pigeon and all of that when we do big back bends later on as well. So it's nice as you can just explore it at the moment and kind of just find that stable base first of all. Carmel?
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
I actually found it is quite a difficult pose, and when I break it down, I can find where the limitations are on my body that's restricting me from actually getting comfortably into the pose. But I tried shuffling out the extended leg, and it was so painful. It was so sore.
Where were you feeling it, Carmel? Where was it sore?
The hips and the back, and the back. It was quite painful, and even when I used the block, so I found that I was still leaning all the weight into one side of the body that was relaxing on the block. So I haven't found a stable base that's equal, where I'm treating both sides of the body equally. So I always find that I'm either leaning left or right, and it's impossible for me to not lean.
Carmel, I had a quick look at you in the pose and I thought you were actually getting really a fantastic stable base, and you looked like everything was actually coming together beautifully.
I felt like I was leaning. I honestly thought I was leaning onto that block. That was my saving grace.
The block really does help so much.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit around quad stretching, the back leg flexibility. So this is what Carmel is saying. When she takes her back leg further back, okay, so back leg that's moving back in an extension in that pigeon shape, she's going to be stretching what muscles a lot more? When your leg goes behind you, what muscles are stretching more? That's it, Noel. Your hip flexors and your quads. So Carmel, that's maybe the restriction that you're feeling when your back leg slides further away. And when your leg goes further back in extension, often we have more of a back bend. And that's why you're also feeling it more in your back as well. So, so that's going to be an interesting process. And maybe as your hip flexors and your quads get more used to being stretched, it might become easier. So how do we stretch our quads? And I brought it up a little bit in the class today as well, because it's so complicated now that you're learning your anatomy and we're applying it to poses, and we're going to break it down even more later on when we talk about pose analysis. How do we stretch our quads? In what poses today did you feel that your thighs, your quadricep muscles, were stretching? So no, that would be hamstring stretching. You're stretching the back of your leg. You were contracting your hip flexors and your quads there. No, so that's shortening the muscle to bring your leg towards you. So that's strengthening, okay? How do we stretch and lengthen quads? In which positions today did you feel it, Caroline?
Crescent moon.
Yes. So when you're in your crescent moon pose, low lunge with a back bend, okay? So when your leg is behind you, what do we call it when your leg goes behind? Hip?
Extension.
Hip extension, absolutely. So when your hip is in extension, the hip flexors and quads are stretching. Okay. And it's quite the opposite, like Noel was doing lying down. If I wanted to strengthen quads and hip flexors, Noel was doing this. What do we call this action? When you're drawing your leg towards you?
Flexion.
Hip flexion. So can you see they're kind of opposites? To strengthen, hip flexion. To lengthen or stretch, hip extension. Okay, does that make sense? How do I stretch my quads even more? What other poses? So Caroline was absolutely right. When the leg is back in hip extension in a lunge, it's stretching. What other shapes did we do today? Stretch the quad muscles.
Dancer.
Half
dancer.
What was that? Sorry, Ronelle?
Sorry, half dancer maybe?
Yes, half dancer. So what am I doing when it comes into half dancer?
Extension.
Hip extension. And then what am I doing with my knee?
Also extension.
Flexion. So I know it's so tricky. So hip extension, but to bend my knee, we call it knee flexion. Okay, and this is how we stretch quads. Okay. In other shapes, like if I'm in a lunge and I'm holding my back foot, I'm doing hip extension and knee flexion to stretch my quads, right? Which we did when we came into pigeon with a quad stretch, right? Which we did when we did low lunge and we reached back and held our back foot. You could feel the stretch because I bent my knee and my leg is back behind you. And just remember, like simple movements, like a little runner stretch, like the start of a dancer. You feel your quad stretch when you take hip extension and you bend your knee. When you draw your heel to your bum, basically, is a quad stretch. Does that make sense? I know it gets a bit confusing. So this is the link for back bends. When we do back bends, we warm up by almost stretching the front of the body, right? We stretched our quads, which we know now, by drawing our heel to our bum, and our hip flexors by doing lots of lunges, right? So we're opening up the front of the legs. And then we also did a few shapes reaching up and back in high lunge and low lunge. So we're stretching and opening the front of the body. And the biggest thing when it comes to back bends, what do you think the most important thing to prep for back bends are? Shoulders. You don't really think, because you think, oh, my back, I must have to prep my back. It's actually not so much, because your spine is only going to go as far as it goes naturally. Yes, we want to warm up those muscles by doing side stretches, a couple of twists, but the biggest area of our bodies that require opening up for back bends are your shoulders. Interestingly enough, so back bends are not as straightforward as you think. So we did lots of arms going back. What do we call it when our arm goes back behind us? It's shoulder
Extension.
extension. Yes. What do we call it when our arm goes up? Shoulder flexion. Okay. Flexion. It's confusing. Shoulders, I always say, are the most confusing ones, because you want to say extend your arm up, right? But actually the joint action is shoulder flexion. All right. And that was what our top arm was doing in mermaid, shoulder flexion. Right. And then our back arm in mermaid, reaching back for our foot, is called what again? Shoulder
extension.
Shoulder extension. So in mermaid, I had both shoulder movements, shoulder flexion of the top arm and shoulder extension of my back arm. So we did loads of warming up in cactus arms, interlacing fingers. We did a few stretches like this in our child's pose. And we took Gomukasana arms to warm up the shoulders that they could move into that shape. And a lot of back bends are dictated by your shoulders. Karen, you want to ask? Yes. So if we break it down into joint movements, my top arm is in shoulder, what again? Flexion. And my elbow then does elbow?
Would it also be flexion or
Flexion.
extension?
Yes, you're correct. And then my back arm does shoulder what?
Extension.
Extension. And my elbow does elbow?
Extension.
Flexion. Absolutely. My front leg, oh, now you're really getting into it. My front hip is doing two things. My front hip is in what? Hip?
External
rotation.
External rotation, correct. And what else? It's in front of me.
Flexion.
Flexion, correct. And my knee is in?
Rotation.
Knee doesn't rotate. It only does extension and flexion like the elbow. So what is the knee doing here?
Flexed.
Flexion.
Flexion. Okay, so the hip is in flexion and external rotation. And my front knee is bent like the elbow. My knee is a hinge joint. It just bends and stretches and it's bent. So it's in flexion, right? Okay, back leg. My hip is in what in my back leg?
Extension.
Extension. If I just have my leg like it is now, my knee is in?
That's extension.
Extension. It's straight. If I then bend my leg and come into pigeon, my knee is then doing what?
Flexion.
Flexion. Okay. Does that make sense? So elbows and knees are quite easy because they either are straight or they're bent. Okay. So either extension, yeah, or flexion, bent. Extending arms and knees, bending knees and elbows. Flexion, extension. Make sense? The hip can do more than one thing. It's either in flexion, bones coming together, or extension, reaching away, bones moving apart. But it can also rotate. And we do a lot of external rotation in yoga. So our hips are similar to what other joint in our body? It's a ball and socket joint. Where else do we have ball and socket joints? Shoulders.
Our shoulders.
Exactly. So our shoulders do the same. They either do, what's this one again? Flexion or extension. And they can also rotate, external rotation, internal rotation, like the hips. Okay. And those are pretty much the main ones because we do a lot of that in yoga. We flex and extend the most, okay? Where else can we do? If I'm doing a back bend, okay? What is my spine doing? Flexion or extension? Extension. Back bends are spinal extension, right? And then forward bends, flexion. Forward bends and crows when my spine is rounding, it's coming together, flexion. Opening apart, extension is a helpful way to remember. Okay. Those are the main movements we do. Shoulder flexion and extension, okay? Hip flexion and extension. And then your rotations, outwards rotation, external rotation, internal rotation, right? And then flexion of elbows, flexion of knees, and extension of elbows and knees. Those are the main ones because that moves your body the most, right? And then we, of course, we got one or two others. If my arms are out in warrior two, what do we call this when the arms are moving away from the midline of the body? What was that, Noel? Abduction. They're moving away. Thinking of an alien coming down and abducting you away. Moving away, abducting. Okay. And what if I bring my arms towards the midline and I want to do like eagle arms? What is coming towards the midline called?
Adduction.
Adduction. Okay. We do those less often than flexion and extension, but those are also ones. Okay, same as the legs. If I step my legs out to the sides, my legs are doing what? Moving away from the midline of my body?
Abduction.
Abduction. And if I bring my legs like into eagle pose towards the midline of the body?
Adduction.
Got it. Okay, so those are the main ones. It's always helpful to put it into movement. Okay, and that helps a lot. All right. So do we feel a little bit more confident in how we're stretching quads and hip flexors? The leg is back in hip extension with knee flexion, basically drawing your heel to your bum, stretches quads, and you can really feel it because quads scream at you when you stretch them. They really let you know when they're being stretched. Does that make sense, Eleanor? We were chatting about this morning. Okay, cool. And then to work your quads, you do the opposite. Oh, now I'm going to get complicated. If I want to strengthen quads, you saw Noel doing hip flexion. Yes. And knee. If I want to strengthen my quads, I do hip flexion and knee extension. The opposite to how I stretch them, right? I know. Now your brain is like, ah! Often we stretch them in the opposite way that they contract in a shortened way. Pretty much, yeah? That's the black and white way, but you also get eccentric. What is eccentric? I like it. Your muscle is lengthening. Yes, a lengthening contraction. So when I'm in plank, my triceps now, we're talking about triceps. When I want to bend my arms and lower in chaturanga, what are my tricep muscles doing? As I lower, my triceps are
Eccentric.
Yes, eccentrically working. Because triceps' main job is to straighten your arm. Feel it. Straighten your arm. Push, push, push. Feel your triceps. That's what triceps do. Their job is to straighten your arms. Unlike biceps, biceps' job is to bend your arm, right? So if I want to work my triceps, straight arms. But now in chaturanga, they are lengthening and contracting at the same time because they've been put under load. Is that making a bit more sense? Pushing up from the floor into plank, boom, that's triceps' main job because they work concentrically. They shorten to straighten your arms and they lengthen to bend your arms. Shortening triceps, concentric, lengthening triceps eccentrically, eccentric. Caroline, is that making sense? You're like, had me worried from it, and there we are, we got it. It is very complicated. We don't expect you to get it like this. But this is why it's nice when, like in the class this morning, I was talking about the movements that you were doing, so you can apply it to movement, and then it makes more sense. Okay. Well done, guys. And of course, when you teach normal classes, you wouldn't talk how I'm talking. Bring your shoulder into shoulder flexion and then elbow extension, because no one will know what you're talking about. I'm just talking that way to you guys so that you can link the joint movements in the classes while we move. Okay. So we stretch quads by doing what? Hip extension.
Extension.
And knee
Flexion.
pretty much, yeah. What poses do we do that in?
Pigeon.
Pigeon with the quad stretch, holding the back foot. Yep.
Low lunge.
Low lunge, especially then grabbing the back foot as well. Yes. And those kind of shapes. Okay. And you were right, dancer's pose as well. But then often in dancer's pose, then you kick your foot away from you and then you're working your quads in a little bit of a different way. But they're also still stretching. But yes. Okay. Cool. So that brings us to back bends. We're going to do a few back bends while we're in these shapes and we've spoken about all these actions. And then I'm going to do a few other poses later on. Okay, so how do we warm up our back for back bends? We kind of did a lot in the class. We briefly chatted about it. What can we do to warm up the back? Yeah, sometimes a little bit of wrong. Yes, what was that, Renelle?
Sorry, twisted maybe?
Twists. Twists are really nice to warm up the back muscles. Yes, and what other shapes did we do today to help warm up the back?
I don't know the name of this one, but the one where we were stretching like that.
Yeah, so this is more of a shoulder stretch, but absolutely, you were also cactus arms and lying over blocks like we did passive back bending. Yes, Summer, you're absolutely right. Lying over blocks, passive back bending is really nice to start moving yourself back into spinal extension. What other movements did we do quite a lot of to help warm up the spine?
Side bends.
Side bends. Absolutely. So we did lots of lateral stretches. Okay. The idea, if you're doing a back bend class, right? And you do 1,000,000 back bends before your final back bend, how do you think your back's going to feel? Tired. Because back bends are hard, right? Yes, no, it's going to feel very compressive. Your back's going to be tired and maybe a bit sore after doing tons of back bends. So the idea with back bending is we actually want to warm up the back in different ways. We can do side stretching, we can do a few twists and other ways to warm up the muscles in the back without having to do 1,000,000 back bends. And you can feel today when you went into mermaid, your back wasn't exhausted. And you can feel even just by doing that, it was kind of enough, right? If you did a whole bunch of upward facing dogs and bridges and wheels and camels, Before you got there, your back would be kind of, so you'd be sitting there right now and being like, ugh, I can feel my back, right? So that's the idea when it comes to back bends. We want to warm up spine in different ways and then stretch shoulders. Most of all, if you're prepping for back bends, you'll be doing a lot of shoulder warming up. And different back bends require different shoulder prepping. So some back bends, my arms are in, what's this called again?
Shoulder extension.
No, Summer.
Flexion.
Flexion. That's all good. We're in arms. I told you, shoulders are confusing because you want to say extend your arm up, but it's not. It's flexion. You'll get it. And moving back away from you is extension. So what back bends do I do with both arms over my head like this?
Warrior.
So back bends, Helene. Which back bends? Big back bend.
Oh, back.
What is this one? A bridge? Is it bridge? Wheel.
Full wheel. So like bridge, but with your arms overhead and pushing up into full wheel, you're doing with your arms overhead, right? And if we were doing king pigeon pose, you would do it with your arms overhead. You haven't learned that one yet, but mermaid taken to the next level. Then I would spend a lot of time prepping my arms like this, right? And if I'm doing like dancers pose, half dancers, what is my arm doing in half dancer? Zama?
Extension.
Yes, thank you. How would I then, what movements could I do to prep for shoulder extension? That's it, Karen. Interlacing the fingers behind your back. What muscles are stretching?
Pectoral.
Yes, absolutely. So what are the movements? Yes, Noel, cactus position. So because today in Mermaid you had both shoulder flexion and extension, we did them all. Sometimes you would focus on one more than the other, depending on the back bend you're teaching. If your back bend has arms in shoulder flexion, or if your back bend has your arms in shoulder extension. Okay, a little bit confusing, but it all will come together, I promise. Okie dokie. So moving on to back bends, let's do some pose breakdown. On page 135 in your manual, you'll find back bends. And our first back bend is Anjaneyasana, crescent moon pose, low lunge with a back bend. Okay, so this is a, yes, Karen.
When it comes to the foot that's extended at the back,
Mm.
when are the toes up and flexed, and when is the foot lying flat?
So good question. And you know, it's always a question that comes up. Whatever feels best for you, Karen, your toe can either be flat on the floor or toes tucked behind you. What it does make a difference for is sometimes the pressure on your knee. So sometimes you'll feel less or more pressure with one or the other way. So it doesn't matter. Either one is fine. Okay, both are fine. Whatever feels best for your body. Okay, doesn't make too much difference in the stretch because your knee's on the floor, but it can make a difference to the pressure on your knee, whichever feels better. Okay. So we do this as often a prep for back bends because we're stretching what muscles?
The pectoral.
Yeah, we're stretching up a little bit through the arms, but mostly in your hips. What's happening in your hips here?
The hip flexors.
The hip flexors and the quads. Yes. Okay. So when we do back bends, because we're moving backwards, we're stretching the front of the body. Like today, we did a lot of low lunges and high lunges to help warm up for the back leg in hip extension. Okay, because most back bends, we're taking the legs into hip extension. Okay, and then yes, we have the added bonus of the arms here, reaching up. And what I really love from this pose is the sense of feeling that you're not dumping into your lower back, because in back bends, we want to lengthen the spine, and then move back. Feel what happens just as you're seated wherever you are. Sink into your back, like slouch, and then try back bend. You'll feel you can't actually go very far, and you can actually feel it jams in your lower back. Can you feel that? Sink and then back bend. It feels like you're dumping in your back. It's scrunchy, right? Now put your hands on your ribs just for a nice feeling, and feel like you're lifting your ribs up and lengthening your waist and lengthening your spine. And now bend backwards. Can you feel how you don't feel that like crunch in your back, but that you've created length in your spine? And what that also brings our awareness to more is bending more from our upper back and not bending so much, not relying on bending so much in your lower back, because it's easier to bend in your lower back than it is in your upper back. Why do you think? Why is it harder to back bend in your upper back? Because of the curve of the spine? Yes, Eleanor, absolutely, because that's just our natural shape of the spine. But also, what is in the way back there? Shoulders. Yes, your shoulder blades. I'm getting really good at your at your miming. Your shoulder blades are also more in the way. There's more bones, and your ribs, where your lower back doesn't have all these bones in the way. So that's why it's a bit harder to bend in your upper back. But what we're looking for back bends is not just dumping in the lower back, but trying to find an even arch through the spine, a congruent curve. So the whole spine is bending back in one line rather than just in the lower back. Okay, lots of talking. Let's get to some moving. So I will show you first, and then you will try your Anjaneyasana. Okay. So I'm going to come from my plank, step or downward dog, step 1 foot forwards, and ground my back knee onto the floor. If the knee is sore, you can always take extra padding for your back knee, or a quick fix is just to fold your mat, which works really nicely. Okay, so from here now, for my Anjaneyasana, my hip is in extension, my back hip, and my front leg is in hip flexion, right? I'm going to reach up through my arms, and without sinking and slouching into my back, right? I want to feel that I'm lengthening up through the sides of my body and lengthening through my spine, and then the sensation of lifting the chest in a little back bend in Anjaneyasana. Okay, you'll also notice sometimes in this pose, because it's a really deep lunge, sometimes your knee goes a little bit past your ankle, and because we're really emphasizing a big stretch, that's okay. Right, here remember you can do your nice cactus arms, some lovely shoulder stretches or side stretches, but you could also take a nice big quad stretch here in Anjaneyasana. Okay. All right, so come into the pose, come from plank, downward dog, and then step right foot forwards. We want to emphasize the lengthening up through the spine and the deep lunge in the hips. Okay. When you've stepped your right foot forwards, inhale both arms up. Ground your back knee, so knee on the floor there, Zani. That's it. Reach both arms up. Strong, straight arms. And now just feel the difference. Sink into your back like slouch. Okay, you can't bend back actually as much, okay? Then that feeling of lengthening up through the sides of the body, reach up through your arms as much as you can, and then lift your chest and bend back. Can you feel how that gives you more space? Wow, Ronelle, that made a huge difference for your body. Think of lifting your chest more instead of just using your lower back. Lunge deep into the front leg. Good, to feel that nice stretch. And then you can cactus your arms or interlace fingers. You could bring in whatever shoulder work or whatever's relevant for your sequence here. And you could also hold your back foot in a quad stretch by drawing your heel to your bum, stretches quads. Yes. And then release and feel that on the other side. stepping the left foot forwards and grounding your right knee down. Reach up through the sides of the body. Lengthen up through your spine. So we're not dumping in the low back. We're lifting up, and then little lift in your chest and reach up through your arms. Lunge deep into the hips. Yes, beautiful. Whatever arm movements feel good here, to cactus, to interlace, to side stretch. And if you quad stretched on the first side, make sure you're even and quad stretch on the other side. Yes, drawing heel to bum, hip extension, knee flexion stretches quads. Yes, well done. And then gently release and bring it back and come and have a seat. All right. So you can feel how that's it's a back bend in itself. And it's also a great prep pose for back bends where you can bring in shoulder stretches, extra hip flexor stretches and quad stretches to move you into back bends. Okay. Sama.
When you are stretching the quads, how do you prevent this knee part from not hurting too much?
I know, because it's so sore. It's like very bony, especially in this lunge. I know I felt it too because I don't have my usual mat today. Pad it, Zama. So extra padding helps a lot because it just simply, you are on your bone. And remember today when we did the mermaid, I said shuffle your leg back as much as possible so that you rest more on the top of your thigh and less on your knee. So how that looks, and it really helps if you can get there, which is also tough because it's like, it's a huge amount of flexibility. I'm going to do it in mermaid. So if I'm here and my thigh, I haven't pushed it back. You see, I'm more on top of my knee. Okay. But the more I can slide back in a lunge or in pigeon, the more I can have that weight more on the top of the thigh. So when it comes into your lunges, if you can shuffle that leg back a bit more and then bend to rest more on the thigh, it helps. Rather than having your knee too close, then you're going to feel the pressure more on the knee. But it's tough. It's sometimes tough to get that leg that far back, and you may just need to fold your mat or take extra padding. Can you feel a bit of a difference there, Zama? Yeah. Okay, cool. It's tough. It is sore. Trudy, and then we'll come to you, Eva.
I wasn't sure the instructions you gave into the hip. I'm finding it difficult to like move a bit more into the hips. The difference between moving into the hips and dumping into the lower back.
I know. I know. It's a very fine line, Trudy, and it's a great question.
Yes.
Because as soon as you want to lift out of your hips, you tend to, the more you want to lengthen through your spine, you kind of pull out of the lunge, right? And then when you lunge into the hips, then you feel like you're sinking forwards a bit. So find the balance between the two. We want to keep the deep lunge, but with the length in the spine. And Trudy, it is okay. Your low back is going to be in a back bend, but you're just not sinking into it. So it's both. I know exactly what you mean. And what we all do, we all reach up and we come out of the lunge, and then I say lunge deeper. And then as I reach up again, we come out of the lunge and then lunge deeper. So it's kind of like we're feeling a little bit of both in that. Eva, where have you gone?
I just wanted to ask, I have been having a lot of cramps, particularly today in my hips. So what do I do to get rid of it?
So I think it's a little bit of a process because your muscles are having to work so hard at the moment. It's quite normal. You're going to have cramps, maybe some weird spasms, funny things going on. The stronger you get, the more those muscles function at a better rate. And I think just have lots of water and supplement yourself to help the process along the way. Some people say magnesium, salt. Sometimes it can help, just extra protein in your diet just to help your muscles through these hectic days. Not much you can do at the moment, Eva, but there is hope. It will eventually go away. And you know what? Sitting on the floor, you're sitting on the floor now?
Yeah.
You're probably sitting on the floor the whole, like for a long period of the day, and it gets it's tiring for your hips to sit on the floor. So that also doesn't help. So if you get a bit tired, sit up on something and just put your phone or your device a bit higher and sit on a chair for a bit will also just help your hips a bit. Part of the fun. Stiff muscles, niggles, cramps. Just as we get stronger, it should ease away. Okay. All right. Any other questions to do with our low lunge with the back bend and Janiyasana? Zani?
I've got a question about hip extension. My right leg goes a bit further than my left, and I realize it's because my left. Okay, now the question is, when I want to stretch and strengthen the hip flexor on the left, which is not as flexible at the moment, do I need to focus on having my hip in an external or internal neutral position? Because it actually feels like it's a little bit internally rotated, which is causing it to not want to, go back as far. But sort of thinking about an external rotation, that really pulls. So then I don't know.
Yeah, very wow, good observation, Zani. We're getting to know your body very well. That's excellent. Feel the stretching different and always. Neutral to external rotation, internal rotation, not so much. So in you lunge, just keeping so some great hip flexor stretches you can try. If you are in a lunge and then you just stay upright a little bit more and actually tuck your bum. It's going to stretch right at the top of that hip. It kind of pulls more. And then you can do the opposite and then lunge deep and allow the hips to open more. So you're almost like doing a little bit more lizard, become really low into it. And then just try all different movements, both. But not so much internal rotation. Allowing the hips to open will get more of a stretch like external rotation. Yes, you're spot on. And then also be more upright in high lunge and low lunge, and you'll feel some different stretches too. And then just allow for the process. Don't force it. It'll slowly come.
So it will strengthen as well with those stretches.
No, more so stretching. To strengthen that muscle, you would do more hip flexion work. So, I mean, great hip flexion work is like one-legged Tadasanas. So this is hip flexor strengthening, and you can always do these kind of things. So you can strengthen, lengthen. Yeah. So a little bit different. If you wanted to strengthen and lengthen at the same time, whoop, now you're really getting me moving. You would do these crazy kind of things like this. So I'm lengthening, but I'm going to eccentrically contract. And it's really fierce. And a lot of very quad dominant, that one. But that's how you would combine those two actions, just for interest's sake.
I feel like I need that last one. Thank you.
Fun. It's really fun. Cool. Okie dokie. Any other questions? Cool. So I'm kind of doing this in my own order because we'll have another back bend session where we do big back bends, but we don't want to tire out your back by doing too many altogether. So on page 137, you will find Purvottanasana, reverse plank. Okay, this is quite a hard pose and works very strongly on your pecs. Okay, so I'll demonstrate it for you and then you can give it a go. All right. So I start with my legs straight, okay? And be aware in this pose, what I'm always going to check, and the others will know that have been on the course with me before, keep your big toes together. Your feet are going to want to turn out to the sides because you're contracting your bum, which is also an external rotator. We're going to keep feet together, just as a look thing. Okay. I'm going to place my hands behind you. Note how the fingers are pointing forwards. So this is also going to work strongly on the wrists. Okay, your hands aren't too close towards your hips because it's not going to give you enough space to lift. So your hands are about a hand's distance or more behind you with your fingers pointing forwards. You could modify and turn your hands out or all the way to the back if it was really horrible, but the idea is to bring your hands forwards. Okay. I always like this pose just on the floor and then lifting the chest. And you'll feel a lovely stretch across your shoulders. It's quite intense, okay? Also be aware, neck in line with spine. So we don't throw the head back, neck in line with spine, drishti just ahead of you. Then, keeping the chest lifted, you're going to raise the hips up, push down through the hands, gaze towards the ceiling, but not dropping the head back, and then pushing those hips up nice and high. And then gently lowering back down. Okay, very strong on your shoulders. Okay, so just take it easy, feel it out. Let's have a look how it goes. So come to seated on your mat. And with your legs out in front, big toes together. Step your hands behind you, so a little bit more, Sasha. Yeah, that's it. Fingers pointing forwards towards your toes. Helena, arms back a little bit more. Sorry, Helene. Arms back a little bit more. Yes, like that. Can you feel like you can straighten your arms more? Now, just here, don't lift your hips, but just lift your chest into a back bend. That's it. Noel, can you flip your fingers to point forwards towards you, or is it too horrible? You can do it that way if it's for a reason, but just be aware. Point your toes towards the floor and just lift your chest. Can you feel that stretch already across your chest? Okay. Don't throw your head back too much, Trudy. Drop your chin just down a touch. So you're gazing just a little bit up. Now, push into your hands and inhale, lift your hips up. Try and keep the lift of your chest. That's the idea of the pose. This is the main reason of the pose, to lift your chest. Point your toes towards the floor and keep your big toes together and lift your chest, lift your hips. It's very strong. So whenever you need to come down, listen to your body and slowly lower down. Now, can you feel by not allowing your head to drop back, it's very tiring on your neck as well, okay? Those neck muscles are working, but it's fine because there are also muscles there and they can also work. Nice, Summer, that looks great. Looking up releases your neck if it's completely very, very, very uncomfortable for your neck. Then looking forwards is okay. Otherwise, gazing to the ceiling is the neck alignment you want. That's it, Trudy. Yes. Push down through the arms, lift up through the chest. And it's very Ashtangi to drop the head back. So I know it's hard to resist. Ashtanga, they love a good head throwback. Why don't we want to drop our heads back? Got to question these things. Question me, question what you've heard. Question this. What's that, Zani? Is it pinching?
Yeah, I said I had shoulder problems.
Yes, Helene.
So I figured out it was my neck. So I went to the physio and she said that I need to do this ugly thing.
Yeah, the double chin.
Where you put your chin back. And so I've been doing not as much, but some of my primary series still. And for up dog and for this one, I don't throw my neck back at the moment. And it's helped so much. I just need to get those, that neck, the spine a little bit more safe and secure and held.
And Helene, it could be that your neck actually got sore from dropping your head back repetitively. Same thing happened to me. I thought I had a shoulder injury. I was in so much pain. Turned out I had a bulging disc in my neck from doing silly stuff, lots of silly stuff, not only dropping my head back. And it's important because your neck is so mobile that you can overwork those vertebrae. And now, Helene, you can feel it takes a lot more awareness and strength to actually keep your head up, because it's like really strong on these muscles in the front here. So yeah, it's really important. Little fun thing, if you put your hand on your neck, you can feel that big bone right at the bottom, like here, right? Go up a little bit from there. When you throw your head back, your vertebra pushes so far forwards, it almost disappears. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
And it's like very crunchy and very pinchy. Okay, it's fine, but your head is very heavy as well. It's fine if your head didn't weigh so much, but you're putting a lot of weight on a very small, very mobile part of your spine. Okay, and it's not so good. Okay, so we don't want to overwork the neck. Just because it's easy, we can do it very easily. We want to be mindful because stuff happens. Like Helene and like me, you can hurt your neck and it's really not fun. And the pain shoots into your shoulder and you think you've got something wrong with your shoulder. I'm with you. Eleanor. Yes, sorry, Helene, finish what you were saying.
Sorry, the question I had was in the primary series, I'm happy to keep my neck straight in like just about everything, but where I worry is if I can't do Urdhva Dhanurasana, because then you kind of need to extend your neck back, but I think not as much.
Not as much. So what you want to do in Urdhva Dhanurasana full wheel is just relax your head back there. So don't look back towards your feet even more, but just relax. You've gone upside down, you just relax your head and then that feels better. Don't try and look back even more. And then it should be okay. We'll see when we get there. It may feel a bit scary going into it as first. So you can do the double chin to feel safe, but then you'll feel you relax and it'll actually be mostly fine. We'll check it out then. Okay. Eleanor, coming to you.
Yeah, this pose, I've never been able to get my feet flat.
Yeah,
ever.
That's normal.
I don't know if that's a problem for other people. Is it fine if your feet are?
Totally, because basically it depends on how much your feet point down like this. It's your ankles. So it depends on the shapes of your feet. It's so not important. But the idea is you're reaching your feet away from you and you're just not letting your feet flop out to the sides. But it totally depends on the shape of your ankles. That's all good. Okie dokie. Are we feeling all right with that pose as much as you can be? I know it's a really tough one.
Someone just had a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. I'm seeing it now. Zama, can you bend the knees a bit before pushing up into the hips? Yes, absolutely, Zama. So you can actually even do the bent knee pose. Is it because of your knees feel a little bit? Yeah, totally cool, Zama. Bend your knees a bit that they feel more comfortable. And there's even a version of this pose where you can do it with your legs bent and it's like a little tabletop position. So if you start with your knees a little bit bent and then push up, that's totally cool. And it's so good that you're realizing what works best for your body. And that's what we really want. That's the yoga. Excellent. Trudy.
Okay, yeah. So you asked us why shouldn't we throw the head back? And then I didn't really get why not. So is it how I understand it? It's because of the compression, right? So there's too much compression then, and you create more space in, so you create more space by sort of, just doing
Trudy,
that.
You're right, exactly. Right? You create compression, and neck extension when your head goes back occurs mostly at one vertebra in your spine, C4, around there, if I remember correctly. So when you drop your head back like this, all the movement is happening from one little tiny vertebra in your neck. And then that's just overworking one part of the spine with weight. And you're right, it's creating compression and can create impingements and can just wear down by overuse. I mean, if you did it once or twice, cool. But the fact is in yoga, like you can know from your Ashtanga, every time you go into upward facing dogs, like 30 times as your warm up in your Sun A and Sun B, and you do that every day, that's a lot of head throwing back. And you can overwork that one part of the spine, which is something we want to be cautious of. And you know, truly, like I mean, for you, you're very comfortable there. It's not a problem for you. But for other people, it might be a really big problem because they spend all day behind a desk like this with forward head posture. And then they come to your class and they throw the head back. And then they've already been doing so much of this that just is too much for the neck, and then creates it can be very sore, and it's very common. And something we see a lot of in yoga. We just need to avoid the throwing head back for most people. And even for you, like take your head back a little bit because it doesn't look bad, but keep a bit of integrity to just lift a little bit so that you're not completely relaxed, that you're not completely hanging in the neck, but that you're able to keep a little bit of integrity. Because for you, it's maybe not much of an issue. But as I say, our students are different. We can't make our problems their problems, but we also can't say things that come easy to us are fine for them, because we have to just look, and that is one of the things we've got to be careful of.
No, it has been providing me with issues. So I just wanted to mention that.
There we are. There
so
we
it's
are.
not an issue for me.
There we are. So there's the evidence, right?
Yeah.
So I don't need to say any more on that. Helene and Trudy, we love their Ashtanga practice. Both have a little bit of neck issues from that.
This is just super helpful. I mean, since last week, and I finally figured it out, because when I first felt that shoulder pain, I was in headstand weirdly. And then I thought back, I'm like, but the pose that you do right before headstand is Matsyasana.
Mm-hmm.
So that like triggered it. And then suddenly in headstand, I felt it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well done, Helene, for realizing that. I mean, a lot of like vinyasa practices, they do shoulder balance. So it's like full neck flexion without support. And we're going to learn how to do shoulder balance safer. And then exactly like in Ashtanga, Matsyasana, throw the head back. So fully dropping your head forwards with weight, and then dropping the head back with weight. And it just causes so much neck issues in yoga. We have to question, why are we doing this? Are there any benefits to doing this with our neck? No. So we need to be careful of stuff like this. Okay. All right. Cool. But always ask, always question. I love it. Okay, we're going to come into our baby back bends now on page 138. Okay, so this is Cobra. Our Cobra pose, which we do in the sun salutation. And in the picture, she's even lifted up quite high. You don't even have to lift up that high if you don't want to. Okay, and then we'll do Shalabhasana as well. I'm going to demonstrate both of them for you. And I am pregnant, so I am taking a little bit of padding for my tummy. And if you're wondering why your yoga teacher gets bigger and bigger every week, now you know why. So thank you. Most of the yoga feels fabulous, but unfortunately this one not so great. So you can actually take padding as well for yourself on your hips. Sometimes can feel a little bit sore. So, I mean, often people use padding for their pelvis. I'm going to take some strange padding that you won't need. All right. So for our Shala, our Bhujangasana Cobra pose, hands are underneath your shoulders. There we are. And what we want to feel is your shoulder blades drawing down. Okay. That's what we're looking for the most in here, because you're strengthening the upper back and drawing the shoulders down. That's such a huge benefit to these poses. So we're pulling the shoulder blades down and lifting the chest. Sometimes a really nice cue here is to lift your hands off to make sure that you're not just pushing up with your arms, but that you're actually drawing your shoulder blades down and a little together. Now the neck again. You don't want to throw the head back and scrunch the neck. We want to keep that length through the back of the neck. And then you have that beautiful lengthened line through the spine. Gaze is a little bit forward, so drishti is ahead, but not up. Okay, so that's our first baby back bend. And while we're here, I'm going to talk about Shalabhasana. Palms are facing your thighs. And again, we're going to lift the chest and squeeze the shoulder blades together, as well as lift the legs up. All right. In both of these baby back bends, It's about strengthening your upper back. It's about bringing your shoulder blades down and a little together and not scrunching your neck. Okay, so I'm going to cue you through it. Let's come to lie on our tummies. Okie dokie. Place your hands underneath your shoulders. That's it. And often we've come from a kneeling chaturanga and we've lowered to this position. Okay, your feet are hip distance apart with your toes pointing straight back. Okay, inhale to lift your chest and curl up from the ground. Nice, beautiful. A lovely cue here. So Noel, bring your elbows off the floor and bring your hands back a little bit further, Noel. Yeah, just under your shoulders. Yes, like that, just like that. Now from here, lift your hands off the floor. Can you feel how your upper back muscles are working? Yes, Karen, so that's exactly why I give that cue. Can you feel? Lift your hands off the floor. Now you feel you're using your back muscles to lift you. And then soften back down because it is quite tiring. Good. I'm going to give you another instruction which feels really nice here. Don't move your hands, but think that you're dragging your hands down to lift your chest up, as if you're pulling your hands down to your sides, but they're not actually moving. And curl your chest up, and with your hands flat on the floor, pull your hands down towards your waist. Yes, can you feel how that draws your shoulder blades down and together and also gets a nice bit of tricep work? So Renelle, your hands are still underneath your shoulders. We're still in cobra. Yes. Now your neck. Don't scrunch your neck. Look just towards the edge of your mat and feel the back of your neck is lengthening. That's it, Eleanor. Yes. Squeeze shoulder blades together and down. Helene, try and draw your shoulders down a little bit more. Come down a bit lower. Yes. There. That's perfect. And now drop your chin slightly. That's it. That's it, Helene. Can you feel the difference? So no tension in the neck or in the shoulders. Everybody down and relax. It's quite tiring for your back, so just take a moment to soften. So that's our baby cobra pose, okay? Which is so much benefit for our students to strengthen their backs. You can feel how strongly it's working your back. Stay here and we'll do Shalabhasana. If you have any questions, please don't forget. Often we do these two together. Okay, for Shalabhasana, place your hands facing your thighs. So palms facing your thighs. Thumbs to the floor, baby fingers to the ceiling. This pose can be done with either feet together or apart. Apart feels more comfortable because there's more space. Okay, so arms straight back, Karen, like aeroplane arms. That's it. Now lift your head, hands, and feet off the floor. Because we're lifting the feet now, you're going to feel your bum contracting as well, your glutes. Lift your legs up at the back. And your lower back kicks in a little bit more here as well because the legs are straight and lifting. Sasha, straighten your knees. Yes, lift your chest, squeeze your shoulder blades together, and now be aware of your neck again. Take one more breath and softly release back down. So Shalabhasana works a little bit more into the lower back, your bum and your hamstrings as well, because your legs are lifting. Could you feel the difference? Where Cobra, mostly around the upper back. Push into a little child's pose if you want, just to really soften your back, because these are concentrically working your back muscles. So it's shortening back muscles to strengthen them, which is very, very good. But very tiring as well. So just give your back a little breather. When you're ready, come up. A lovely way to release from back bends as well is a little gentle twist. So either kneeling or seated, just a twist from side to side helps to warm the back before, but also helps to kind of release the back muscles after back bends as a little counter pose. Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can come back to seated. So we first did cobra pose. Your hands were underneath your shoulders and you lifted your chest. Strong work across the upper back and shoulder blades. Did you feel that? Zani, you can go for it.
Pulling down on the hands really helped. I felt it pulling down a little bit lower, so it was interesting. I'd never felt it before, but it was really nice.
I love that cue. Something recently I like saying, that feeling, I mean, your hands are moving, but it feels like you're pulling them down like this, and it just brings in such nice shoulder work and tricep work. So yay, Zani, I'm glad you enjoyed that as well.
It was fantastic. But now my question is, it's something I learned in Pilates. She said I mustn't do that too much because my core isn't strong enough, so my pelvis isn't pushing into the mat enough.
It's fine. You're fine, Zani. It's actually going to be so good for your back. So I know you've struggled with upper back issues. This is going to be the best thing for it. Speaking as a Pilates teacher and as a yoga teacher, Pilates, they're very strong on the core, and good, be strong all over is how I feel now. In Pilates, sometimes they also say tuck your tailbone in back bends.
Yeah.
That's probably something she was also really making you do. Which is fine, but it's going to make you bend less. And if there's a reason for that, cool. But for the rest of us, and I even think for you, Zani, because you're moving beautifully, your pelvis is just going to move with your spine because they're connected. So just feel it as you're sitting. Put your hands onto your hips and then move into a little back bend. Can you feel how your pelvis tips forwards just naturally? And then round your back. Can you feel how your pelvis then tucks back behind you? So interestingly enough, your spine and your pelvis are joined. They are joined together and they move together. And to try and fix your pelvis and then try and move your spine, you're going to just move less. It's not really like natural, because you can feel there it was supernatural for your pelvis to move with your spine. In Pilates, they try and make you not move your lower back or your pelvis and only lift your chest. So it's a teeny-weeny little movement, and sometimes that's relevant. But for this, you'll be totally safe doing a little baby back bend.
Yeah, it felt really nice. So I just forgot about the core. That's
your core can't really work. Remember, your core works when we do what shape of our spine?
Flexion.
Flexion. So if you want to work core, we do spinal flexion. If you do back bends, your core actually can't contract because you're moving in the opposite direction. So it's kind of two different movements. They can sometimes work eccentrically in a lengthened way, but on these ones, not so much. You might feel a bit of pressure on your tummy just because you're pushing on your tummy. Okay, Sani, so you're totally great. You might actually feel your back feels better by just allowing your back to move naturally. Any other questions around our cobra pose? So Helene, you felt you lifted up quite high and then your shoulders wanted to lift a little bit. By bringing it down, you were able to keep the shoulders down and your neck placement looked fantastic when you were a bit lower.
Also, when you're a bit lower, your biceps, I guess, have to work harder.
Triceps, yes. Yeah. Your triceps, so tricep, yeah. Otherwise, what we tend to do is we just kind of straighten our arms there and then no muscles are working very much. By being a bit lower, and especially that arm pulling down action, which is just my favorite cue at the moment, works your triceps so nicely, so yay. You can, of course, curl higher up in Cobra if you wanted to, but it's nice to first introduce this pose just as a baby back bend to build that strength and awareness of your shoulders and your neck like you all did now. Does that make sense? Okay. Then we did our Shalabhasana locust pose with our arms straight back. When our arms were in Shalabhasana, we are doing what with our shoulders? Shoulder extension, yes. So Shalabhasana, we're working shoulder extension. Can you feel how it really works the whole back of your body in Shalabhasana? Because your legs are lifting now. What muscles lift your legs up at the back? What muscles take your leg back into extension?
Your quads?
Glutes.
Glutes. Glutes. Your glutes and your hamstrings take your leg back. So in Shalabhasana, your bum muscles are working to lift your legs up at the back. Remember, like in Warrior 3 last night, we were lifting our leg at the back and squeezing our bum to get your leg up at the back. Same thing here. You're just lifting both legs. Okay. And then even more here in Shalabhasana, we're squeezing those shoulder blades together to open the chest. Eva, do you have a question?
I do. So I can do everything in this pose, but for some odd reason, my pelvic bone hurts
Yes,
all the time.
that's why I was saying you might need padding as well. Yes, Eva, it's so painful. Seriously.
It is. I've never heard anybody talk about it. I'm like,
No.
I can't be disposed for a long time because it hurts as
It's
hell.
so I have the exact same problem, not normally. And I often fold my mat for extra padding or a towel or a little blanket because it's your pubic bone can push on the floor and your hip bones, and it's nothing you can do about it other than pad it. And Eva, if you pad it, you'll feel your legs will lift up and it feels so much nicer and you can actually do the pose.
Okay.
So it is a real thing. not just if you're pregnant you try to take padding, but it can also really, really help. So it's a proper issue. You're so right.
Thanks.
Summer.
Can you use this Chalavasana pose to prep for the boat pose where you are holding both your legs up like?
Oh, bow pose. Yes, Summer, absolutely. It would be a good prep because your arms are moving back in shoulder extension and your legs are lifting up as well. They're similar. If I was teaching bow pose, I maybe wouldn't want to do too many back bends that would tire my back. So maybe I would prep a little differently. So if we're looking at bow pose, I might just lie on my tummy and hold my back foot and just do a one-legged little bow and then release. Where Shalabhasana is actually, it's almost more tiring for your back, Summer. It actually requires more strength than bow pose, but really good observation that they're very similar shapes and they save the same joint movement. So you're totally right on that level. But when we put it into sequencing, which you'll be learning with Taryn, we have to look at not tiring muscles. And that's also going to be a big factor when it comes to back bends. And Shalabhasana is a tiring pose. You could feel it when you guys were in it, right? Your back muscles are working hard and it's very tiring, but same shapes. So that's excellent. But tiring will be a factor with linking them. Okie dokie. All right, those will be all the back bends we're going to cover today. All right, because that's quite enough for your back now. You've done lots of mermaids, you've done lots of active back bends. Let's take a very short break and then I want to do some standing poses because I have a few I want to finish before we do maybe some seated poses if we have time later on today. So can we just have a 5-minute break just to freshen up, grab some water, make sure you stay alert. So let's meet back at 20 to 1, 12:40. I'll see you in 5. So on page 57, we're starting with Parigasana gate pose. And this is in your assessment as well. It's often a pose that isn't really taught in regular classes, but it's actually a really, really lovely prep pose for a lot of different things. And it's just a really nice introduction also into the standing poses. Demi, and stay off this one. Maybe the next few. Just take it easy today. Demi has a little knee niggle, so she's taking it easy today and should go away if she just rests now. Eleanor, you have a question before we jump in.
Yeah, sorry. I just know with this one, I can't get my foot flat again. Do you want me to?
It's not important. So I'm going to give you options again with the foot.
Okay.
It's totally cool. That's just how the shape of your foot. And it really does.
Normally we get to like put a block or something just to push down on. So I wasn't.
No, it's fine. So you can also do this pose with your foot flexed. And then you kind of, which feels a lot better for most people because Eleanor, it's not just you. It doesn't get your toes on the floor. It's very common. It's normal. Okay, so I will show you the pose first and then we'll come into it together. Again, knees. If your knees are sensitive or if you're on a hard floor or your mat isn't very thick, you may like to take padding for your knees. Okay. So in this pose, there's quite a few different ways you can flow into it. So I think it's not often taught because people are really unsure how to get into it. So one way I like to get into the pose, I'm just going to face you. So if we're on cat-cow, you can take your leg off to the side and then bring it up to kneeling, and then you can move into the pose. Another fun way to get into it is also from one leg back, and then you're going to swivel on your bottom heel, and then you open up kind of like a little kneeling half moon pose, and then you can flow into it that way. Okay, so there's actually a lot of ways to get into it, or just simply place your foot out to the side in kneeling position. Okay, so just as I said with Elena, your leg that's straight can be flexed up to the ceiling, which actually most people prefer, or your toes reaching away to the floor. Whatever your ankle feels most comfortable in. It doesn't change anything else in the pose. Okay, so whichever works for you, I'm going to do your flex. Your bottom thigh here is vertical, so you're not kind of leaning off like this. You're going to bring that leg so that it's nice and straight. Arms are out to the sides. Your heel of your extended leg is in line with your knee of your bent leg. All right, so heel in line with knee. So it's quite cool because it's almost similar to doing like warrior two. Sometimes when I teach beginners for the first time, I teach them warrior two like this, or sometimes side angle pose like this, which is quite nice. And this pose is very similar to doing almost like triangle pose, but with the arm overhead. So it's a lovely way to just kind of feel those shapes and the natural hips and the external rotation of the legs by not having to be standing. So that's what I really like about this pose. So we come into it, reaching to the right, hand to shin, and again you can do the sweep of the arm down and then over the ear to come into your gate pose. Okay, lovely side stretch for the body. All right, it's quite cool if you're thinking of flow. You can also do like, this is like half moon pose, but on the floor. Or you could also do, if you were teaching dancers pose, you could link in shapes in a kneeling position to add more flow, which is quite cool, just for sequencing and creativity. Want to give it a go? Cool. So let's try flow into it just for fun. You can come from cat-cow on all fours. Send your right leg back behind you. Flex it to the side. Place your foot on the ground and then pop up to kneeling. That's one way you can get into it. Okay. And then another way, send that right leg back again. Now this keeps you on your mat, which is quite cool. You're going to swivel on your right knee. Your right leg is back, so you're going to swivel on your left knee and turn to open almost like in a supported side plank. Yeah. And then pop yourself up to kneeling and voila. Okay, or simply kneeling and taking one leg out to the side. So wherever you are now, feel comfortable to face forwards. Your extended leg, so your right foot is in line with your left knee. Okay, flex your foot up towards the ceiling, or you can point your toes towards the floor. Whatever feels most comfortable for you. Okay, with your arms out to the side, take a breath in. Reach to the right, bring your hand onto the shin, and then sweep your left arm down and over in line with the ear. And here you can apply natural hip positions to allow you to get deeper into your inner thighs and hamstrings to stretch. And there's a sense of a twist to rotate the chest to the side, just as we felt last night in side angle pose. Hey, Eleanor, yeah, you've got it here, nice. Beautiful. And then you can come back up and bring your hands, maybe you want to flow out of it or simply change legs to the other side. Okay. And then let's feel it on the left leg out to the side, heel in line with your right knee. Okay. Come out to the side, and then when you're ready, side stretch over to the left to bring your hand to the shin or ankle, and then top arm can either sweep overhead or down and then over in line with the ear, which often feels more comfy. So Sasha, just have a look at your bottom leg, that it's not leaning off towards the left, that your right thigh is still vertical up to the ceiling bottom. Yes, there you are. So you just were a little wide. Perfect, now you've got it. And then twisting the chest open. Again, your bottom shoulder is stacked over your shins. You may have that sense of leaning back a little bit, just as we had in triangle pose. And now you can try the cool transition. So drop your right hand off to the side and do like a kneeling plank, supported plank, kind of shapes of half moon pose kneeling. You can lift your left leg up at the back, right hand on the floor, left leg up. If you're a little confused, looking like this. That's it. And it's quite fun. You can reach back and hold the foot and kick your foot into your hand. So you can also use these shapes to play with and create some creativity for your sequencing. Okay. And then you can release and soften and come out of the pose. It's a lovely one, hey? Gate pose Parigasana. Any questions around that? Zani?
Back foot on the bent knee. Should the toes be tucked or?
Again, Zani, whatever feels better for you. So the foot can be flat or tucked, whatever feels best for your knee. Okay. Trudy.
So when I have to decide whether to put down my foot, so it's fine. I can put my foot down like this. Can you see? Is it?
Yes.
But what happens is my toes don't want to go down. So my toes want to, like, once
That's
they
so
like,
cool.
yeah, pointed. So it's weird. So when I put them down, I get a funny, like a weird pull in my ankles.
Yeah, because it's strong on your ankle. So keep it pointed. That looks quite cool. I like it.
Is it fine like that? Okay.
I love a good floor.
Yeah. So it's like, they just don't want to go down.
And then might actually feel quite nice for your knee. Like for Caroline as well, she has also the knees that like to go more than straight. That floint can actually feel really nice and stable. And I think it's cool.
Because I mean, if the leg goes straight, the toes go straight,
you also tend to lock back.
Hyperextend. Yeah.
So the floint is looking lovely for you. I like it. I love a good flointed foot. Sasha.
So one question and an observation. Should the extended foot be like facing completely the top of our mat, or can it be a little bit to the side?
Good question. So Sasha, if your foot is facing the side, we can properly externally rotate the leg, right? But as soon as you turn your foot forwards a bit, it tends to internally rotate the hip. So this is why I always say foot facing towards the side. It can come a little bit forward, Sasha, if it's not affecting your hip socket too much. But that's what often happens. And what we kind of want to do in this pose is have that foot come forwards a bit. But it tends to roll in and then you can't bend to the side. So ideally foot to the side, toes can be in a little bit, not a drama, but not facing towards the side of your mat.
Okay.
Could you feel that difference in the hip?
Yeah, I did. And on the right side, with the right leg extended, I could have my foot completely flat and it was really comfortable. I was like, oh, this actually feels very nice. And then on the left side, it was uncomfortable. Even with my foot flexed, it was, yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, Sasha. All right. So you can see how you can link this pose into a sequence that it flows and can be quite a useful pose to add in. Eleanor.
Sorry, I'm battling with the pronunciation of this one. Can you pronounce the Sanskrit?
Parigasana. Parigasana. So the H is kind of silent. Parigasana. Yeah, not a pose often spoken or used, but it's so it's Sanskrit. Yeah. Gate pose, it's just in English, but it's really cool pose. I love it. It's one of my favorite poses. All right. So if you're happy to move on, I'm going to come into just touch on reverse warrior and reverse triangle, and then we'll move into some balances. Okay. So we did our reverse warrior in the class today, remember? And we did a crazy arm bind within it. So let's chat a little bit around our reverse warrior. So we've got warrior 2 legs, okay, nice and wide. So So normally it's a lovely transition to flow out of the pose and then move back to the mat. Or sometimes we can use a reverse warrior to then straighten the legs and move into triangle pose. So basically reverse warrior is a transitioning pose. Okay, there's not tons of benefits to this pose in terms of peak pose sequencing. It gives a little bit of a side stretch, but we don't use it a lot in terms of a prep pose, more just to link and flow poses. Okay, so I've got my warrior 2 legs and I'm reaching back for reverse warrior. This backhand, so a lot of people feel that too much weight on this back leg can be a bit sore for the knee. So this backhand is actually very light as you reach back. And another option is to actually take it around your back like a bind, which a lot of people actually prefer. So my backhand is kind of bound around like that in a reverse warrior. So you've got 2 arm options there. Do whatever is your preference. And then the same applies for reverse triangle, which we will actually do in our assessment. From triangle pose, you can come up just to do exactly the same, but with a straight front leg, and then windmill to move out of the pose. Okay, would you like to give that a go? So come from plank, downward facing dog. And then when you're ready, step right foot forwards and open up into warrior 2. Good. Find your warrior 2 legs, pressing the thigh out, making sure your stance is correct. And then from here, quite nice to reach your right hand forwards, like you're almost reaching away from you, and then reverse your warrior. Good. It's just dancey and flowy. Beautiful. And then from here, you can straighten arms and legs and move into triangle pose. So you can use that as a transition to then move into your Trikonasana triangle. Good. Lean the shoulders back in your triangle. Open the chest. And then from triangle, we'll come up to reverse triangle. Do exactly the same, but with straight legs. Inhale, reach back towards the left. And then windmill your arms back into plank, downward dog. So it feels nice. Good. And then you can flow throughout on the other side or just come down to release if you wish. If you want to go on the left, warrior 2 on the left. Opening out. Good. Make sure that stance is nice and wide. And then reverse your warrior, sweeping back, keeping the lunge of the front leg. You can try the bind version of your hand behind your back or hand just down the back thigh. And then straighten arms and legs and move into triangle pose. Good. Using that as your transition. And then from triangle pose, reverse your triangle and sweep up. Beautiful. And then windmill your arms back into downward facing dog. Can you just feel how it's like kind of a bit of choreography? It just links and flows, poses nicely. And that's really its main purpose. Well done. Any questions on your reverse warrior? Quite straightforward. Good. Sasha.
With the hand, the raised hand, is the palm facing the floor?
Correct. Palm is facing the floor overhead. Good. And then Trudy, I think your hand was up from earlier. Cool. Elena?
I think I confused the hand that you then bind.
Oh.
Sorry, so you've got your arm up, you're binding.
The bottom hand is binding behind the back. That's it.
I
That
just
is
did it the wrong way around.
That's okay. Interesting. So it's just if you don't like kind of that backhand resting on your back thigh, especially if your knees are quite sensitive or very bendy, then the bind version works quite nice. Or it depends what you're sequencing for. Like today, we took a crazy Gomukhasana bind, cow face arm bind, because that served the purpose of our sequence. So you can also be creative within all these poses. Why not? It's vinyasa, so the options are endless. And with peak pose sequencing, we actually encourage you to be creative and find these shapes in other movements or poses or just exercises that are relevant for your sequence, which is fun. Okay, so those are all the standing poses. You've learned them all now. Next, we're going to come in just to two balancing poses that I didn't get a chance to touch on last weekend because we just focused on the big, important ones. So we're going to come to tree pose on page 59, Vrikshasana, tree pose, Vrikshasana. Best known as tree pose. Okie doke, so I will show you the pose and then we'll come into it together. All right, so for tree pose, we start standing in our Tadasana. Back a little bit. All right, and I'm going to take hold of my right ankle, which is helpful to lift it up to the top of the left inner thigh. Okay, my toes of my right foot are pointing straight down towards the floor. Okay, be aware it's also okay to have this leg lower down or anywhere along there. It's often heard that if you have your foot on your knee's going to break. It won't break, but it might not feel as comfortable. Okay. Ideally, we're trying to get it right to the top of the left inner thigh. And then you often will say your foot always slides here, right? Or slips off. So the trick for that is to think of flexing your foot. So I'm thinking of flexing my foot and digging my heel into my inner thigh. And at the same time, using the inner thigh to squeeze into my heel, okay? And that will help a lot to keep the grip of your foot. Then when you're ready, we bring hands to heart center, which really helps to center you, and always drishti for balance. And then you can inhale, take both arms up for tree. Arms are parallel with palms facing one another in tree pose, okay? And then when you're ready, you can bring hands back to the center of the chest and release. So most importantly here, getting that foot to flex and squeeze against your inner thigh will help to keep that foot in place. So see if that helps you. I know it's always a little bit of a sticky bit. So standing in Tadasana when you're ready. Eyes focused, drishti. Always when it comes to balance, it's drishti. Bring your right foot up, hold your heel, and bring your heel of your foot right to the top of your left groin. That's it. Flex your right foot now. So you dig your heel into your thigh. Your foot may slide down a bit, just going to find where it holds. And now squeeze your inner thigh into your heel and bring hands to heart center to start to find your balance. Good. And when you feel steady, then inhale, take both arms up overhead, palms facing one another, arms parallel, and then straight arms there, Eva. Yes, nice, strong, straight, parallel arms. To come out of the pose, we bring hands to heart center. You all look like you have beautiful tree poses, and release to Tadasana. Good. On the other side, when you're ready, left foot comes up. Take that heel high up into the right groin. Flex your foot. Can you feel how it helps to dig that heel in and make your foot stay there? Squeeze your inner thigh into your heel, hands to heart center to find your balance. And when you're ready, inhale both arms overhead, reaching up through the arms. Arms are straight, and then really reach up to feel that length in the sides of your body. Bring hands to heart center and release and ground back to Tadasana. Well done. That looked perfect. Nice, everyone. And release. Great trees. Anyone having any issues there? I know the foot thing is always a thing. It's sliding or it's falling off. Eleanor.
Sorry. Normally when I do this in class, they cue you to put your hands together.
Absolutely. You can if you want to. For your shoulders, it makes no difference because we know your shoulders are so flexy. But remember, for most people, if they bring hands together, it's the most restrictive to bring your arms back in line with your ears. We're parallel. Most pretty much accessible. Scaption, the easier for your shoulders. So Elena, for you can bring hands together, totally fine. But when teaching students classical, you can also just have arms up straight. I guess it depends also what you're
teaching. Does it change the load at all? Does it change the load at all by putting your hands together?
Not load in particular, but definitely it's more restrictive in the shoulder joint. And if you're squeezing, then you're adding a lot more muscle contraction. So it could be harder. So I think it depends what you're teaching, Elena. If you're teaching something where you want hands together, teach it that way. We do it in the Warrior 3 sequence where we have arms parallel, so we teach it that way. And it kind of just would depend. Sometimes you might want to do a wavy tree or whatever kind of serves the purpose of the pose. Everything is fine. It's just what suits you and your purpose for the point of the pose. Trudy.
So I'm trying to more think about what cue to give in terms of not sinking into your standing hip, because I don't like, so for cues for me, I don't like saying don't, so what can you rather say instead of don't sink into your knee or into your hip? What would you
lift up and out of the hips, or lift it's tricky not to say don't. Place your hand on your hip and then lift up. So Trudy, it's also some people have a little bit of sink in the hip depending on the shape of their bone structure. So I mean, for you can be quite straight, but especially women, if you have wider hips and then your feet come down a little bit more narrow, it's always going to look like your hip is sinking, but you might not necessarily be sinking very much. But I know what you're talking about.
That was actually my other question, whether it's okay to sort of, whether it's okay to have a bit of, because sometimes it just makes you a bit more stable.
Yes, Trudy, it's such a good point, because sometimes people can only do it that way because of their hip structure. So if you look at me, because I'm a bit like that as well, I'm trying not to sink. Of course, I get what you're saying. So let's look at the differences. But you can see my hips are wider than my feet. Some people, especially the guys, are often very straight, and some women. But for here, when I shift my weight onto one foot, can you see how my hip is just naturally on the outside of my foot? It's just because that's it. Not that I want to do this and like pop the hip up. So you can lengthen up through the spine, should also help give that instruction, Trudy. Just lengthening upwards, you can see it stop me from popping the hip, but lengthen upwards from the hips, through the spine, upwards through the arms might be a way of cueing it without having to say don't or the negative. But be aware, I mean, a lot of teachers used to come and push me over and say, oh, hip must be here. And I can't balance that way. That's just, my bones just don't work that way. And for a lot of women, that's just how we are. But I get what you mean. We also don't want the sink. So you're totally right. So lengthening up from the hips through the spine, out through the arms might be a nice way of bringing that in. Tricky one to instruct, eh? Any other questions about our tree? Caroline?
I have a question about the hips as usual. Whether we should square them to the front, like whether that's an instruction, and also about the legs. Is it okay to micro bend, or should we always have straight legs in this position?
Such a good point. So first, let's come to the hips. So your hips in this pose will point forwards, okay? Which means your knee might not face the side because it depends on your hip structure, okay? If you wanted your knee to face the side, then you would have to have natural hip position. And I guess it depends how you want to teach the pose. But because your foot is pointing forwards, we want the hips to point forwards in this pose. And your knee might just go as far as it goes out to the side, depending on your range of external rotation. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the student's knees will not always be facing to the side. Is that what?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's fine.
I mean, your hips, we know you have very flexy hips, so your knee's going to face the side. For me, when I'm in tree pose, I don't have your kind of hips. My knee's not quite off to the side. It's kind of like a little bit more on a diagonal, but my hips are pointing forwards. If I wanted my knee to the side, I'm going to rotate a bit, natural hips, but then my knee is going to maybe feel a bit niggly because my foot is fixed. So hips pointing forwards and the leg will just be wherever it goes. Okay. And then your other point with the hyperextended knees. So this is where I know for you, it's a little bit of an issue when we come onto one leg. It can be quite painful if you're locking back. So no, your leg doesn't need to be straight, your standing leg. It can be a little bit of a micro bend in the knee to take that pressure off the knee, especially when standing on one leg. Hyperextended knees are often most uncomfortable. So they never have to be straight. Just a little bend is perfect.
Even for people, let's say, who don't hyperextend, let's say maybe they don't.
Then they can be straight. Then they can be straight. And then
if they don't have enough strength, perhaps, like if that's an issue, because that's an issue for a lot of people, is that they don't have enough strength to stand on one leg. So can they bend it or?
Yes, absolutely. If the bending, like remember when we came into Warrior 3, I said, bend that bottom leg to help you get the balance, which is totally cool. And then if you feel stable, now begin straightening that leg. Like in Tadasana, we have the kneecaps pulled up, quads active. Then we can move towards that. But I think we've also got to decide what is the purpose we want from this pose. Most of the time, we want to be able to balance. So we want to refine our drishti and be able to balance. So if a little bit of a bend in the knee helps with that, totally fine. And then they can work towards straightening the leg.
Thank you.
Cool. Karen, and then we'll come to you, Sasha, next. Karen, you just need to unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go. I have found, also because I'm getting older and stability is going, that yesterday I could get tree pose beautifully on.
I know you said so.
My stability was great. Today I'm really struggling. So also from Caroline's point, and what I've seen and read, get the person to put the foot in the calf.
Yeah.
In the shin as a baby pose. And then there are going to be days where, wow, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. I know. It's balance is one of those things that sometimes it depends what kind of day you've had, if you can balance or not. And balance is a skill. It's something, the more you do it, the better it gets. So you're so right, Karen. You can have that foot just even at your ankle even, so that it's there to catch you if you're feeling a little bit wobbly, or the calf, and slowly make your way up. All of the anywhere along that leg is totally fine, because the idea is just to be able to balance for a little bit on that foot, wherever the leg is. I always say to improve your balance when you're brushing your teeth, balance on one leg. When you're boiling the kettle, balance on one leg. The more time you spend on one foot, the more you kind of refine that skill. Balance is tough. Thanks, Karen. Sasha.
So something I noticed yesterday, and I just kind of want to build on to what Caroline was asking, is that for my hip like pops out of socket. It takes a lot of strength for me to kind of like hold my glutes and keep my hips where they should be. And so yesterday I was thinking, oh my gosh, I hate Warrior 3. This is the worst thing ever, because I was bending my knee on the, the standing leg. And as soon as I straightened it, it was like my hip, I didn't need to squeeze it to stop it from popping out. And I found the same with tree pose, is if I have a little bend in that leg that's like supposed to help with the strength, my hip juts out and it becomes very painful.
Wow.
I just thought like maybe that could be something to note for us. Like if you do say bend the knee, some people might not. Yeah. I don't really know how to work
making
around
it harder
it,
in different places.
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible how we all have completely different experiences, even just in a pose like tree pose? So yes, Sasha, you are needing to strengthen your glute medius muscles, the side bum muscles, not the juicy bum muscle at the back. And these poses can be helpful to gain that strength, but something to be very careful of. So thanks for sharing that. So Sasha feels like her hip's going to pop out the socket if she bends her knee. Where the straight leg, she feels more stability. And you get a lot of crazy flexy people in yoga because it attracts the flexible kind. So something to make note of. And then thanks, Sasha. I'm glad you're finding something that works for that, because everybody is different. Sometimes people feel more stable with a bent knee. So it's good we explore all these options. And Zama, you also had a question.
I just wanted to ask, actually, tree pose is not an issue for me, but if I've seen in some flows, they go from the tree pose to, I don't know the name of poses, but the one where you're holding up your foot like that, yes, and you stand on. But I seem to struggle with that one when it comes to keeping my foot flexed.
So we're going from tree pose, and then you're binding your tree foot and taking your leg forward and then out to the side, and then you find which leg that you're holding the foot to flex.
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, that is a crazy hard pose. So it's really difficult to just hold your foot and take your leg out in front of you. Yeah. And then Zama, my tip for that, and we're gonna talk more about that pose later on, because it's not something you have to worry about, but it is fun. So Zama's talking about Utthita Hasta Parangustasana, hand to big toe pose, and then you take it out. I'm sure the Ashtangis will know this one very well. What helps here, Zama, is to floint the foot a bit, and that actually helps you to, so you're not flexing, but that floint actually helps you to keep the bind of your big toe really nicely. So maybe something to explore, and then push the ball of your foot away a bit. How does that feel?
No.
First of all, there's so many components of that pose: flexibility, strength, what your bottom leg's doing, the length of your arms, the length of your legs. So hold on to that question for me. And when we do that pose, we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. Remind me when we get there, okay?
Right.
Because that is like on a whole nother level. Okay, one more balancing pose we'll do now is our eagle pose on page 60, Garudasana. This one is also in your assessment, Garudasana, eagle pose. Alrighty. So in this pose, we've brought our arms to the midline of the body. So we've got that adduction in the arms and the legs. Okay. The biggest thing to remember in this pose that gets everyone is it's opposite arms to legs. So if your right leg is on top of your left leg, then you need the opposite in your arms, and your left arm will be the one on top. Yes, like that, Zani. Okay, so I'll show you the pose, and then you're going to try and remember your lefts and rights, because that's the part everyone gets a little bit stuck on. Okay, so you can do arms or legs first. So we'll start with the legs. Bending the knees can, not for everyone, but most of the time can really help to get the thighs to cross over. Okay, so it's like a little Utkatasana, and then I cross the thighs. Okay, now when we cross the thighs, this foot, I mean, sometimes you wrap it behind the calf, only if that's comfortable for you, or it can be just out to the side, sometimes balancing on the floor for balance. But it depends on a lot of stuff with your hips, your external rotation, and your thighs. If you can curl the toes, it does not matter. Okay, so we bend the knees, we wrap one thigh over, bottom shin will go wherever it goes. Okay, because my right leg is on top now, I'm going to bring my arms out to the sides and hook my left arm on top of the right, and then wrap palms together. Okay, coming back to the legs, my knees and hips are pointing forwards. So I haven't twisted off to the side. I'm trying to bring my knees to the middle and my hips to face the front. Okay, and then with the arms, my eagle arms, I'm lifting my upper arms away from my chest, and I'm moving the hands a little bit away from the face. And then my drishti is going to be looking through, it depends on how long your arms are, looking through either your forearms, your wrists, or your fingers. Okay, and we're lightly drawing the shoulders down with our Garudasana eagle arms. Okay, so see if we can put all those components together and come into Garudasana eagle pose. So come to standing in Tadasana. And see if it helps. For me, it really helps to start with a bit of a bend in the knees, like a little Utkatasana chair. And then take your right leg over and cross your thighs. And then it depends where your legs go. Bend your left knee a little bit more. And maybe you wrap your toes, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. Okay, the point of the pose is to balance at the end of the day. Turn your hips to face forward. So your knees come towards the midline. And just watch those with niggly knees. Good, Jimmy's not doing this one. Good. Okay, now let's try the arms. Because your right leg is on top, bring your left arm over your right arm and wrap your forearms and your palms to face one another. It's a hard balance to do this while you move your arms. Okay, now lift your upper arms away from your chest and your forearms away from your face. Lightly draw your shoulders away from your ears. That's it. Center yourself in Garudasana, and sometimes squatting deeper helps. And then slowly release and come back to Tadasana. You can try that on the other side if you want. So then bending the knees. What you can also do is do your arms first if you want. So cross your right arm on top of your left. Then the arms are there and you don't have to do it while you're balancing on one foot. Okay, now bend your knees and cross your left thigh over the right thigh. Lift your elbows away from your chest, your hands away from your face. And then center your knees and your elbows towards the middle of your body. That's it. And when you're ready, gently release and soften. Well done. Okay, not an easy one. Trudy.
Yeah, sorry, it's just the instructions in the manual are then different because it says cross your left thigh over the right and right arm underneath the left, but it should be then right. If you, yeah, because now
so
this is the
right arm.
No, it's just the.
Oh, yes, you're right. It is incorrect in the manual. You want opposite arms to legs. So yes, you're right.
Yeah.
And some people cue it differently as well. So if your right leg is on top, you can also cue right arm underneath. So I think that's where it got a little bit muddled. Right leg on top, right arm goes under. But whatever version, however you want to instruct it, for me, right leg on top, left arm on top works for my mindset. As long as you have opposite arms to legs, it actually helps center you. So if you have right arm and right leg over, you kind of feel like you're just leaning off to the side, where having opposite kind of counterbalances itself, and then you're more centered in the middle. Thanks, Trudy. I'll make note of that. Okie dokie. Not an easy pose, but we will be doing it in your assessment. So we will practice it again and again and again in our smaller groups. Zani?
Is anyone else dizzy now? I don't know why, but that made me really dizzy. Anyway, just an observation.
Observation. Interesting. All the twisting and wrapping. Okay. All right, those are all your balancing poses. Okay, so we're getting through all your balances now. We've learned all your basic standing poses. And now we're going to come into some standing twists. How are you guys feeling? We're learning a lot today. I hope you're not feeling too overwhelmed. Cool. So let's start with our twisted chair on page 72. These will be probably the last poses we get through today. Then you'll have your lunch break. Okay, so the big thing to note with twists, and just as we saw with back bends a bit as well, is your pelvis moves with the spine. So wherever you are, you can sit either on your chair or with your legs out in front of you, okay? just as an observation before we go, just sit. If you're sitting on the floor, legs out in front of you are more obvious. So if you're sitting in a chair, you'll also see it. And just take a twist to the right. Okay, just twist to the right. Just don't think about it and take a twist. And then look at your feet. Can you see how your left foot is now forwards of your right foot? Can you see that? So it showed us when we twist to the right, our hips turn and one foot or sometimes one knee will come forwards because that's just naturally how we move. If you now try and twist to the right again, but don't let your feet move, can you feel it restricts the twist? You twist less. Okay, so the moral of the story is allow your hips to move with you when you twist because it'll get you into deeper twist and it's natural. It's just natural because that's what happens when you turn. Okay, so that'll come into play now with chair pose. When we do revolve chair pose, you've often, and I know you've heard it, keep your knees together, right? Don't let one knee come forwards of the other knee. And I'm going to say, if you want a big twist, you have to let your knees move. And you can feel the difference. And again, it depends what you want from the pose. What's the reason why you're doing it? So we come into the pose all the same. I'm going to come in from Utkatasana. Bring hands to the center of the chest. Turn to the side and then hook elbow to the outer thigh. And as I've done this now, my one knee has come forwards of my other knee and it's allowed me to twist and turn. Okay, so that's something I really would like you to feel in the twist. And then secondly, I'm going to show you from the front here. When we get the hook, we're leaning off to the side. I'm getting the hook and now my shoulders are on the side of me and I can't turn. So once you've got the hook, it's important to lean your shoulders back again. Can you see now how I brought my head in line with my pelvis, my head in line with the spine, and like that, I'm able to turn and twist more. Okay, and when you do that, you can then get your hands into this beautiful alignment of bringing your hands down towards the center of your chest. Otherwise, you'll land up like this, and your hands like stuck on the one side of your chest, and you feel like you can't turn. So big things here, lean your head back. Once you've got the hook, lean your shoulders back in line with the spine. You'll be able to twist more and allow your knees to come one forwards of the other knee. Feel the difference. So let's come to standing Tadasana. Feet together. And when you're ready, bend your knees and sweep into Utkatasana chair pose. Weight back into the heels, send your bum back, all the same. Bring hands to heart center. Twist to the right and hook your left elbow on your right outer thigh. Notice one knee naturally came forwards, right? That's cool, let it. Okay, now because you've leaned forwards, now you need to lean your shoulders back. It's going to feel like your head is leaning backwards. Can you feel now? Twist your chest. So push down from your bottom elbow to help twist your chest to the side. And bring your hands more towards the middle of your chest. Nice poses, everyone. And release, come to standing, take a little breather. I know it's quite tiring. Whew. Can you feel the difference by allowing your hips to turn? Okay, let's feel it on the other side. And this time, don't let your knees go with you. So keep your knees together, twist to the left. Don't let your knees move. Try and hook and twist. Can you feel it's harder? Okay, if you allow that knee to now go, let your knees slide, then you can twist more. Can you feel what I'm saying? Okay, and then bring your head back in line with the spine. Nice pose there, Zani. Beautiful. Twist, null, twist, null, twist, twist, twist. Yes. And then bring the hands towards the center of the chest, shoulders down, and release. Good, well done. Take a little breather. I know these twists are quite intense. Could you feel the difference it made by allowing your knees to move? And you can twist more when you bring your hair back in line with the spine, gets that beautiful alignment of a chair pose. So those are the two main points I want you to make note of there, okay? And you could also feel when you weren't allowed to move your hips, how you couldn't twist as much. So I guess it depends what you want from the pose. Most of the time we want to twist. So then let your knees move with you. Okay. I know you're probably feeling a bit tired now, but any questions on that? Carmel.
Laura, with your knees, I struggle to keep them together. So the more I'm twisting, my knees are opening up.
That's also okay, Carmel.
Is that okay?
It's fine. So you're saying the one will come forwards of the other, but they separate a little bit apart.
They separate, yeah. They're opening up, yes.
Perfect. No, that's fine because you have to just do what feels best for your hips and allows you a little bit more space. I saw Elena also allowed her knees to separate a little bit to give her more space. And that's good because you got to feel what works for your body. I find it easier with knees together because then I can kind of let them just squeeze against each other and it feels easier. But if that gives you space, perfect. The main goal is to twist. So perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I get a much better twist if my knees separate.
Perfect. Then that works for you, Carmel. Perfect. Nice. All right, so if we're feeling happy about this, I'm going to move to page 71. So I'm just doing this in my own order. And we're going to look at our twisted side angle pose. This is quite an intense pose. So I'm going to give you quite a few options along the way. The biggest thing I want you to note in your manual, you can even circle the back foot. Again, this is going to be, remember, it's like a warrior one back foot when the back heel is down, right? And what did we notice in warrior one with the hips? Could the hips turn and face the front? So now with this pose, if your back foot is on the floor, you're not going to be able to allow your hips to turn with you like you did in chair pose. And then you're even taking this more than warrior one because you're not just trying to turn towards the front of the mat, you're trying to twist to the opposite side. So I want you to circle that bottom foot and say it's easier on the ball of your back foot, like a high lunge. Unless you've probably been doing loads of Ashtanga and you've forced it down for many, many years, it's going to feel different, but feel the difference. So also say this is like a twisted high lunge. So you can also look at this pose as twisted high lunge. Okay. So it's revolved side angle pose / twisted high lunge. And I'm going to show you now. I hope that didn't confuse you too much. So first of all, we can get into this pose from a twisted low lunge, okay, which is a really nice way to enter the pose. And you will do twisted low lunge in our assessment. So from plank, down dog, stepping foot forwards. I'm going to ground the back knee. I'm going to come up like Anjaneyasana and take a twist towards the left. Okay, for me on my left. So again here, I'm going to hook the elbow, okay? And then because if I don't lean back now, this is going to be the shape of my pose. So you need to bring the shoulders back a bit. I'm going to push my elbow onto my thigh. Can you see the difference that made? Don't sink into your bottom shoulder and elbow. Press down through that thigh, and then you will feel that you can bring hands more towards the midline. Okay, so that is also what we'll be doing in your assessment. So we'll try twisted low lunge. And then you're going to, from twisted low lunge, you can bring it into a twisted high lunge. So I can also could have come from high lunge, brought hands to heart center, taken my twist, lean shoulders back firstly, and then push down for the bottom elbow. That brings hands to the middle. Okay. From there, you can do full expression of the pose, bringing hand to the floor and top arm overhead for revolved side angle pose. But be aware, that is really hard, okay? It's really tough on your shoulders, first of all, to get that arm over, okay? And also, most of us will keep hands in prayer and just be able to twist and do the twisted high lunge version, okay? Could you see my back foot there? I did it all on the ball of the back foot. So if I come the classical way, which I know you Ashtangis have done, from like warrior legs. So we know in warrior one, I can't turn my hips to face the front, right? So now if I want to try and twist, I've fixed my bottom foot. So it's not allowing my hips now to twist with me. And it really makes it way more restrictive to come into the pose. And I want you to feel the difference. So I teach this pose only on the ball of the back foot to allow the hips to come with me and turn, and everything moves as one into the pose, and you can actually twist. So let's feel all of those variations. So coming from plank, downward dog. Lots going on. Stepping the right foot forwards, lower your left knee onto the mat and come into a low lunge with the back knee down. Inhale, arms up. Bring hands to heart center. Twist to the right and hook your left elbow on your right outer thigh. You always twist to the front leg. That's your mantra here. So back knee on the floor there, Zama. Knee down, yes. Okay, back knees on the floor for twisted low lunge version first. Then lean your shoulders back. Push your bottom elbow down into your thigh. Can you see how that's brought your hands to the center of your chest? And keep the lunge, keep bending into your front knee. Okay, so that's version one. Now you can stay here, tuck your back toe and just straighten your back leg, and now you're in twisted high lunge, which is a very accessible way to get into the pose. Okay, rise your arms up, high lunge. You can also come into the pose from high lunge. Bring hands to heart center now in high lunge. Twist to your front leg, hook your elbow on your outer thigh. And that's another way you can enter the pose. Can you feel? Push down through the bottom elbow. Watch either that your top elbow isn't up to the ceiling, but it's actually drawing more down towards your waist. Yes, and then bring hands towards the middle of the chest and twist. Beautiful. Come up and do warrior one. I promise I'm almost done. Ground your back foot, warrior one. Okay, inhale your arms up in warrior one with your back foot down. We're still on the right. Feel here, can you turn your chest to face the front of your mat? Already your hips aren't moving with you. Now try and twist and turn and hook into your twist over your right leg. Can you feel the difference from having it on the ball of your back foot to now having your foot fixed? Then just there, swivel onto the ball of the back foot like you are, Helene, because you're doing great there. Just feel now when you go back onto the ball of your back foot, how much more you can twist. Yes, that was a great example. Release and take a breather wherever you are. I know that's really tough. Okay, so I hope I convinced you around the ball of the back foot. If your back foot is fixed, it stops the twist. Do it on the other side if you have the energy. If you're tired, just rest. I understand. Come from a high lunge and then turn a bit. Zama, that's okay. So Zama, let me come with you. That looks great, Eleanor. Yes. And then you can also try the arms opening up version. Trudy, from there, go into the ball of the foot. Feel how the hips move with you. So try both so you can feel, especially my hardcore Ashtangis. So Zama, I'm with you. Let's step one foot forwards. Inhale, arms up into high lunge. Bring hands to heart center. Take a twist now to the left side and hook your elbow onto your outer thigh. So this is how most of us will do the pose. So Zama, you feel a sense of leaning your shoulders back. Your elbow comes down. That's on top towards the waist. And you push down through your bottom elbow to bring hands to chest. Good. What I want you to feel, Zama, if you try and put your back foot on the floor now, like a warrior one back foot, can you feel how it pulls you out of the twist? And now go back onto the ball of your back foot. Can you feel how it makes it easier for you to twist? That's pretty much the most important thing I wanted you to get from this today. And then come down, have a break. I know that's really tough. Summer, does that make sense? Did I go through what you were confused about? Okay, cool. Everyone, could you feel the difference between that back foot? I want to hear from the Ashtangis.
The truth is, I usually cheat in that one in Ashtanga. I usually do the ball of the back foot.
It's so much nicer. It's so much better.
Yeah. Now, Trudy is much more OCD. I think she usually puts the back foot down.
Trudy, could you feel the difference?
Yeah, but it felt a bit easier. So if the back foot is down, it felt a bit easier when I brought my hand to the floor, because that enabled me to twist a bit more.
Yeah.
When I brought my hand down, but still, I mean, it's much more accessible with like on the ball of the.
And Trudy, I don't mind if you want to keep doing it with your back heel down. It's something you need to be aware of as teachers. If you want to teach this pose in an accessible way that everyone can come into the pose from a high lunge position, just makes it so much more accessible, because it's actually a really, really hard pose. Okay. And that is going to be a major theme that I want you to understand. We'll recap these poses again, so don't worry if your body's feeling a bit tired to force it all today. We will do it again. But I just want you to understand that your hips need to move with you. And if you fix your back foot, the hips don't move with you. And that makes the pose harder and less accessible. And that understanding will really make you a good teacher, that you can get everybody into a pose that they feel comfortable in without having a back foot down for no reason at all, for no benefit, right? So we also got to weigh up these options. So please make note of that. And then you can practice again during the week as well to feel the difference. Okay. And when we do it again, we'll also talk more about those arms. Taking a bit further, but for most of you, you'll feel most comfortable with hands in the center of the chest, and then opening the arms up is quite a bit more advanced because it's really tough on your shoulders. So those with flexy shoulders probably won't have too much of an issue there, but if your shoulders are just normal, it's tough. It can be really tough. So we'll explore that a little bit more soon. Any questions? Okay. Cool, you guys are doing great. So I want to talk a little bit about revolved triangle. Okay, on page 69. This is not in your assessment because it's a really tricky pose, okay? But I need you to understand what's happening in the feet. And I'll touch on it again later on. But just while we're on the theme around the back foot, like I called the last pose twisted high lunge, I'm going to call this pose twisted pyramid as well. So it's revolved triangle, parivrita trikonasana, but can also be done in a more accessible way, in a more revolved pyramid pose. So it's just going to change your mindset on how we enter the pose. Are you with me? All of this is quite confusing, so don't worry if it's like, oh, what are you talking about? So again, it's the back foot. It's the back foot I'm bringing your awareness to, because if the back foot is fixed, it's harder to twist. If you're on the ball of the back foot, more in like a pyramid pose position, your hips can turn and the pose is more accessible. Okay. So you just need to understand this going forwards for future. Okay. So for my revolved triangle pose, I'm going to think of doing pyramid pose. So my back foot is more parallel to the front of the mat. So my hips can face forwards. Okay, and just like we did in the revolved high lunge and compared it to the warrior one, exactly the same, but the legs are straight. Okay, so then from here I can twist in my pyramid pose legs, and it's allowed this back hip to move forwards with me. Can you see the difference? Hips parallel, Hips are now turning. And then when I come into my revolved pyramid or revolved triangle, just modified on the ball of the back foot, I am able to get a much bigger twist. And you, of course, can do classical with your foot, your hand on the outside of the foot, lean head back and twist chest open. Look what happens now. If I put my back foot down, it pulls my shoulders out of the twist. On the ball of my back foot, my hips can turn and my whole spine can turn more. And what's also a really great added bonus, I don't have any weird twisting in my knee. Remember when we did Warrior One and I said turn your hips? You all were like, oh, my knee? Same thing here. If I'm coming from triangle with my foot like this, my hips can't face forwards, so my knee ends up talking a bit while I'm trying to force and twist to the side. Okay. Does that make any kind of sense? Are you with me? And I know in Ashtanga, I mean, you're going from your triangle pose straight into revolved triangle pose, and you don't really change your feet. It's just the feet just stay the same. So I would like you just to feel that just as an observation for future. Not that you're going to have to do it in your assignments or assessments, but that you need to understand how it works better. Okay. So you can come into or do it your usual way, Trudy, and then just move on to the ball of the back foot if you want. Okay. So otherwise we'll come from pyramid pose. Okay. You can step forwards or step back into your pyramid. So you're on the ball of your back foot. Okay. I want you on the toes of your back foot. Put your hands on your hips and notice how your hips can turn with you to face the front of the mat. Can you feel that? Because your back foot isn't fixed. And now reach your arms out to the sides. Twist to the right. So you always turn to your front foot. That's always your thing when it comes to twist. Pause here. Can you see how your left hip moved forwards with you? And you're twisting quite easily. And then you can bring your hand onto the floor on the inside of your right foot or the outside of the foot. And notice how your hips have come with you. Okay. Good. And then come back up to standing. We'll do the same on the same leg. Now put your back heel on the floor. Okay. And now try and turn your hips with straight legs to face the front of the mat. Put your hands on your hips. Can your hips come forwards with you? And some of you might be able to do this easier than others, right? It's harder, right? And now try and twist to the right and put your hand onto the floor. Can you feel the hip is now not coming with you, and you might feel a bit of torque in your back knee, and it's less accessible. The hips need to come with you in order to get a big twist. If your hips don't come with you, you won't be able to twist as much. Yes, that's it. And then there, just go. So Trudy, stay there, but just turn onto the ball of your back foot, or allow your back foot just to be more parallel. Yes, and you can put your heel down there if you want again. Can you feel how you get a bigger twist, Trudy? That's just what I want you to be aware of. Oops, my screen is frozen, so just give me a moment. There you are, you're all back. Okay, that's it, Trudy. Noel, you're twisting, you need to twist the other way. So turn to your front leg. Yes, there you are. Now can you feel? Allow the hips to turn with you and feel how much more you're able to twist. Yes, and that's pretty much the same as we just taking it from the previous pose to the twisted triangle, that we understand how important it is to allow the hips to come with. Okay. Whew, that was a lot of information. Yeah, Ronelle, great example. Okay, come and have a seat. Did that make sense? Zama?
I'm struggling with balance with this one if my foot is on the ball of the foot.
Correct. So that is the one thing. If you go onto the ball of the back foot, it is definitely harder to balance. That is probably the only downside to doing it more. And you don't have to be high on the ball of your foot. You can also push your heel down a little bit towards the floor to help ground you a bit. The idea is that your foot is just a bit more parallel towards the front of the mat so the hips can come with. Yes, like that, Summer. Yes, just so that your foot isn't turned out in the opposite direction. There, does that feel better?
A little bit.
A little bit. I mean, to be honest, in all versions of this pose, it's quite a hard pose to balance in, regardless of where your foot is, because it's a twist, it's a forward fold, and it requires balance to be in it. It is just one of those very tricky poses to be balanced in just in itself. But on the toe can make it feel a little bit less stable as well. Elena, could you feel the difference in those feet? And then Helene, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I've never been able to do this pose without bending the front knee. And I always wrestled with that. And then my teacher in Amsterdam said, no, it's fine. Just bend your knee. It doesn't matter.
It's just hamstring flexibility, Helene. So by bending that knee, it just helps you to get your hand on the floor and then you can twist. If you wanted to, you could use a block to bring you up a bit higher and then your knee would be straight.
Not even then.
No, really? Okay. I feel for me personally, I feel such a strong outer thigh stretch. It's like a really big pull. So you might feel like me as well. It's just like really, it is just so hard to straighten that front leg. And it's not important. A bit of a bend is fine because the goal is to twist, right? Yeah. Any other questions and observations with those twists? Trudy.
Yeah, like Eileen said earlier, that she usually had her the foot on the ball of her foot, and in the other one. Yeah. I realize now, because with Ashtanga, because you twist to the other side, I've always been twisting my back foot as well. Good. So my back foot has been pointing in the easier direction.
Good. So yeah. Naturally,
just yeah.
That way. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then that's perfect because then it is pretty much like a classical pose. I'm not saying you have to be high on the ball of your back foot, but it's just the idea of having it more parallel, even if it's not perfectly straight, but maybe even slightly turned out like you had it there, Trudy. Totally fine, as long as your hips can face the front at least, and then can move with you. And it's a really big thing, a big concept to understand, and it's quite complicated. But I just wanted to touch on it today, just so that while we're doing the twist, that we understand what's happening in the hips. Cool. Charisse.
So can you please show me the feet placement, the back leg again?
Absolutely. A little bit. It's so confusing. I'm going to show you from the front because I think that'll also be clearer. So from here, so Charisse, classically, the back foot, a lot of the time people leave that back foot. Can you see how it's pointing towards the side? Okay. And then when I try and turn my hips to the front, my hips can't turn. So what I'm saying is your back foot, it can be more like pyramid, where you're on either the ball of the foot or your back heel can come down. But now, can you see my back foot is pointing forwards? So my hips can point forwards. And when I turn, this hip might even come even more forwards into the pose. Okay, look here, Charisse, if I turn my back foot out, can you see how my hips have moved and I'm unable to twist as much? Can you see that? Does that make sense?
No, it's fine now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. It is very confusing. I don't expect you guys to.
The other way around. So now when we practiced it, I couldn't go forward at all, and I didn't understand what I was doing wrong, but it was my back foot. So
it's all about the back foot. Exactly. Just as you said, the back foot can change the entire pose. So we have to be aware that we're not doing something silly with our back foot and stopping the whole pose. Allow the back foot to come with, and then you can do it. Thanks, Charisse. Eleanor?
Sorry, yeah, you just asked me earlier on. I've actually never seen it done with the foot out like that ever. So it's completely foreign to me that people would do it that way.
Okay, good.
It's always been taught to me in a walking line, so both feet face forward.
Walking line is
Yeah,
a great way
sorry.
to describe it as well. So that's actually a really nice cue for this pose as well. And sometimes I say, if you want to step into triangle, it's like you're walking. Just step 1 foot back. And then you can move into revolve triangle pose. So that's actually a really nice instruction. Okay. Well done, everyone. Any other queries? Caroline?
It was just a comment because I'm very flexible all around my body, and I've obviously never struggled with putting my foot down. I thought it was like totally normal, and then the twisting, even my hand touching the ground, on the other side, and obviously through Ashtanga. But it was so nice to, like, this has been so helpful to find out that it's actually not the case with most people. I had no idea at all. And it's going to just make me and everyone else a better teacher, just to find out, like I've learned a lot more about my body just in the past 2 weeks, but also learning about everyone else's bodies and how, it's just been really, really helpful and interesting, because I really didn't know that was a problem. I genuinely thought,
Absolutely, because something, I mean,
Yeah.
like for you, so you're very flexible. You've also got beautiful long arms. So for you to reach and touch the floor on the other side, you've got so much length to do that. So I mean, it's so lovely that you're realizing all these different things about these poses, going to make you such a good teacher. And this is why I say sometimes if you're really good at yoga, you don't understand actually what it's like for somebody else who feels restrictive. If you're very flexible, pretty much. I mean, strength is a whole nother ball game. But if you're very flexible, often you don't understand, well, why can't you touch your toes? Just put your hands on the floor, And
Wait till your tummy gets bigger, Laura, then you'll see.
that as well. It's coming.
Then you'll suddenly, I learned a lot about being pregnant and yeah, suddenly you have this big tummy in front of you and you suddenly realize why people go wider.
Yes, no, and absolutely. And the best thing to do is go and teach people who've never moved before. They'll be your best teachers for you as a self to be a good teacher, to understand. And you're going to use different words, because you can't just say, bring yourself into revolve triangle pose. You're going to have to literally step by step explain where to put your foot, how to move your hips, check that you've brought it in an accessible way. And then it's still that it's not going to happen. And then you're going to look and go, okay, what is going on? Why can't they do this pose? So your students actually, we can prepare you as much as we can, but your students are going to be your best teachers to help you find ways for them to do the poses. Teaching is a very amazing experience, and it's really hard. It is hard. Helene?
Yeah, it's just a comment. I just think this is just so lovely because it is about I love how in this training you place so much emphasis on how everybody is different. Because I've been to teachers who just have had no understanding of this. I had one teacher who kept wanting to squish me into straight legs in downward dog, and she was actually mad at me. Like, she kept hopping on it. I didn't go back to that class, but it's just the weirdest thing when everybody, I mean, I have a 10-year-old daughter and her body is completely different from mine, and she cannot do most of the things that I do, and I have to learn to respect her body and to help her find her joy in movement in her own way.
Yes, because it doesn't matter what it looks like. No one's going to fit into an exact mold. It's if you're in the pose and you're able to twist, who cares what the rest of the body is happening? Just find that expression for your body. So thanks, guys. It's an amazing thing that you're realizing this, and really, really exciting. I'm going to make you such amazing teachers. Really well done. And it's complicated. It's really hard to understand. Teaching beginners is much harder than teaching advanced people. You wouldn't think. Advanced class, easy to teach. Beginners, you have to think about every single movement and every word you're saying to help them find it. So well done. Zama.
I just want to find out, and I saw that Demi had written a comment about her knees with some of the poses. So I just wanted to understand that a bit better. Like what pose can she not do? What triggers it, that kind of thing.
I have an old injury from netball and ballet. So I have an overextension in my knee and my Achilles, and I've gone to a podiatrist for it, and I have support shoes and things. But sometimes with too much yoga, or like lately I've been focusing on stretching my hamstrings, which is a lot of foot flexion, which puts my knee at a very tense kind of angle. So leaning on it, the kneecap itself is very tender. And yesterday during the class, we were doing a lot of those kinds of movements. So my knee kind of got, I don't know, it's just sometimes I can just wake up and it's sore to walk. It happens, it's an old injury and I might need surgery, but I do have also like some exercises that help. So I think that's just my injury that's playing up. It's not anything related to anything else, I don't think.
Yeah. And especially when you're just doing so much more movement down, especially last night, we were doing lots of lunges and bending. We need to get her knees strong. We need to get her quads and her legs strong to be able to do that amount of like hours and hours and hours of yoga. So that's always the thing. It's too much too soon. And I just say to Demi today, just don't push it, just rest it. If something is telling you something, just back off. In classes, if someone had a knee injury or a knee niggle or needed to get their knees stronger, just do less. So Demi, we could say be higher in the lunges. Don't lunge as deep. Don't bend your knees as much. And then she could do everything just in a smaller range of movement. And that is often most accessible when it comes to classes, which you'll talk a little bit more about later on in the course, is working with different injuries as well. But Demi, just got to take it easy today. And then probably tomorrow it'll feel fine, just a bit of rest. Okay, everyone, you have a lunch break now, and you'll be watching some videos later this afternoon to work around your pose analysis. Yep. I will see you then after you've watched those videos at 4:30, and to check if you have any questions around breaking down a pose and the assignments you'll be doing around pose analysis. Okay. So have a lovely break, watch those videos, and I'll see you a bit later. Karen, do you have anything you want to ask?
Yes. Do you want us to be on mats for those?
No,
analysis?
it will just be a talk at 4:30. Just a discussion. So you can bring your cup of tea and your biscuits and your comfy clothes, and we'll just have a chat.
I generally move out of my garage into my study for the chat.
That's perfect. So you can be in your study for that.
Okay. Thank you.
See you later. Bye. Cute.